There he is, the man of the hour, Mr. Galvin in his law library. All right. Chris, I see we're recording. Where's Michelle? Michelle,
Yep,
tell us when you're ready.
I'm ready.
All right, cool. Well, I got to put my video back on so I can gavel this in. It's like, all right. Good evening and welcome to the August 3rd, 2020 meeting of the City of Summit Zoning Board of Adjustment. My name is Stephen Spur and I'm chairman of the Summit Zoning Board. In accordance with New Jersey Statute 10:4-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to a newspaper of record and has been posted here in City Hall. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. This meeting is being conducted virtually via video conferencing in lieu of meeting in council chamber at Summit City Hall, Summit, New Jersey. This meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube page. Members of the public can view the meeting by following the link provided in the agenda. Dennis Galvin is the zoning board's attorney. He will advise the board members on matters of law and is the key interface with the applicant's attorney. Mr. Galvin does not vote on the applications. Chris Nicola is a city employee and is the zoning board secretary. Mr. Nicola works with applicants on getting their applications together, planning our agendas, and keeping our meeting minutes. Mr. Nicola does not vote on the applications. Our board consists of 7 regular members and up to 4 alternates. All members can participate in the hearings tonight, but a maximum of 7 can vote. Most applications require a simple majority to be approved. Some applications require 5 affirmative votes to be approved. You will be told which majority will be required before we begin our deliberations. Mr. Nicola, will you please call the roll?
Chairman Spur.
Here.
Vice Chairwoman Newell.
Here.
Mr. Yuko.
Yuko.
Mr. Yuko.
Here, so muted.
Mr. Laderi is excused. Mr. Steiner.
Here.
Mr. Mullen.
Here.
Ms. Schwartzstein.
Here.
Ms. Hensel is excused. Mr. Millay.
Here.
And Mr. Liketts.
Here.
And for the record, Mr. Galvin's here. You have a quorum. You can proceed.
Excellent. We generally hear the cases in the order they are listed on the agenda. We try to have each hearing last no more than 30 minutes, but we do understand that some cases are too complex to be heard within that time frame. Each hearing begins with the applicant or their attorney giving an overview of the application and the variances that are required. We then hear from any expert witnesses the applicants may have to help explain the application and why the variances are needed. The board members may ask questions of the applicant, their attorney, and the expert witnesses. Once the board members and the board professionals are done with their questioning, the public will have an opportunity to ask questions. This is not the time to tell us what you think about the case. This opportunity comes at the end of the hearing. Before you ask your questions, we need to know who you are and where you live. It is important our court reporter be able to keep a clear and accurate public record. Please state your name before speaking or asking a question. And please do not talk over each other. This is even more important under the current circumstances. After all witnesses have been heard, members of the audience have their second opportunity to speak. And at that time, you may express your opinion, positive or negative, about the application. When the public hearing is closed and we go into executive session where the board members discuss the case and vote, you will be able to listen to our executive session, but you will not normally be able to participate in our discussion. Most applications are heard and decided in the same evening. If a case requires additional information or testimony that cannot be presented tonight, we will carry your case to another date and it will not be decided. Krista Anderson, the city's zoning officer, has asked that I remind all applicants that they must read carefully the resolution that documents the zoning board's decision and to pay particular attention to the conditions contained in the resolution. For example, if a landscaping plan is required, you must obtain one and submit it to John Linson, the city's forester. If a grading plan is required, you must have one prepared by a civil engineer and submit 3 copies along with the application fee to the city's engineering department. Failure to satisfy all conditions in a resolution will result in a delay in approving your application, as it will cause extra work for city zoning staff. The resolutions documenting the board's decision will normally be available 1 month after we decide the case. When I call your name, please tell me how many witnesses you have and whether you think you may complete your case in 30 minutes. So this evening we will follow generally the agenda. We'll hear first 38 Park Avenue Bergen Capital Partners. I believe I see Yvonne. Hi, Yvonne, the attorney for Bergen Capital here.
Yes, Craig Feldman here.
Oh, hey, Craig, there you are. Sorry.
Hey, how are you?
So we're gonna put you up first and do our best to wrap this case after a couple of prior sessions. So hold with us here. Are the Walkers here, 208 Kent Place Boulevard?
Yes, hi.
That's us.
How are you?
Hello. Do you have an attorney or any experts that'll join you tonight?
We have our architect.
Okay, excellent. All right. And then the third case is Koverick, 27 Linden Place. Are we here somewhere?
Yes, we're here.
Oh, sorry, scrolling between screens. Do you have any an attorney or experts with you this evening?
We have our architect.
Your architect, okay. And then I believe, Chris, Beacon Unitarian, we just need to carry them to the September 21st meeting?
Yes, that's correct. We need a motion.
Motion to carry.
A second? Do we have a
I'll
second?
second, presuming that they've granted an extension of the time to board to act, because this one's a long time on this agenda.
Yes, Mr. Maynard has waived all the times for the board to act, and so we're within the rights there. So with that, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Hearing none, all right. Beacon Unitarians now carried to September 21st, 2020. Okay, and then I will just note for the board members in attendance that at the close of our regular meeting this evening, we're going to break for a brief executive session. And Chris has mailed us a link to a new Zoom meeting. It's in your city email account. And so some point this evening, if you can, try to dig that secondary link up. We'll hop off only for a few minutes at the close of our normal agenda. So with that, Mr. Feldman, we can pick
Mr.
back.
Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Sheehan.
Chairman, Bart Sheehan here.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, there was a letter submitted to the board with regard to some urgency, and I was hopeful that the board would consider that at some point in this evening's deliberations. You didn't mention it, I just raise it to make whatever time the board feels is appropriate available for
I see an item. Yep, I see an item for 44 Blackburn Road and 76 Prospect Street. Is that what you're referring to, Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Okay, that'll be item number 6 on our agenda this evening. So hang in there.
All right. I'll rejoin, say, 10:15.
I'll send you an email, Bart, when we get closer to it. How about that?
Perfect.
If you get antsy, you can check back into.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. Thank you, Chris. All right. So with that, Mr. Feldman, if you'd like to pick us back up, I believe we were at the conclusion of one of your expert witnesses' testimony, but perhaps you want to re-engage us with this case?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman. So the expert referring to or questions.
He's cutting out.
Sorry, Mr.
Bad
Feldman, hold on.
news.
Question.
Bad news.
Yeah. Not working.
Craig?
Fortunately, she's
1 second, time out, Mr. Feldman.
He's
You're breaking up here.
breaking up.
probably the.
Oh, sorry.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Maybe you want to try dropping your
Well,
video and just your audio.
Mr. Feldman, you are.
There's yours. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you. Okay, Michelle, how are you doing?
Well, okay, let's see what happens when he speaks.
All right, so the issue is that Ms. Caphone is straddling 2 hearings right now. And so we need about 20 minutes or so. So while I hate to put off the matter any further, of course, perhaps you could go to the next item on the agenda, if that's okay. In the meantime, of course, I'll fix whatever internet
let's-
problem I'm having as well.
Let's do Mr. Sheehan so he can be done for the night.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Sheehan, your lucky evening here. If you'll unmute. You can
You're on
join us.
mute, though. You're on mute, Bart.
Got it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask whether or not Tim Sayburn has joined the Zoom meeting.
I did see him.
Don't see him.
Yeah, he's there. I can see him.
Oh, I see. I do see. him.
He is muted and he does not have video.
Other than that, he's doing great.
All right.
Tim, can you unmute yourself? Hello, Tim.
I'll tell you what.
I guess
No,
not.
you don't need him to do this, right?
Yeah, well, let me go through it. And if
Oh, there
we
he
need
just
him-
unmuted himself.
Sorry, I
Right.
understand I was being called.
There he is.
There he is. Okay.
Mr. Sabrin is now there.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for the record, Bartholomew A. Sheehan Jr. appearing on behalf of Dempsey, and Sheehan attorneys for the petitioner, Oak Knoll School of the Holy Child. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, along with health, safety, education is one of the three essentials that any civilized society requires to be served. During this emergency period, as promulgated by the governor of the state of New Jersey, Oak Knoll School has determined that it will proceed with in-person education deemed essential for the effective education of its students on site this September. To do so, it needs to reduce its class size, and the way in which it proposes to do that is by increasing the number of classrooms. There are 2 proposed additional classrooms proposed to be located in 76 Prospect Street, and 2 classrooms in portable tents with air conditioning and heating to be located in the blacktopped area off Ashland Road behind the primary school and next to the gymnasium. Neither proposed set of classrooms will be visible off-site. Mr. Galvin surely will recall, and perhaps some members of the board will recall, that when the 76 Prospect Street house was brought into the curtilage of the Oak Knoll School property for school use, the neighbor at 72 Prospect Street, Mr. and Mrs. Charles Leza, opposed it vigorously.
Yes.
They do not oppose this request and join in the request for the 2 classrooms of a seminar class nature to be located at 76 Prospect Street. I believe that the relief requested on an emergent basis is within the jurisdictional ambit of the Common Council and the Board of Adjustment. The Common Council has deferred jurisdiction to the board because the conditions of the board in its previous approval for 76 Prospect Street imposed deed restrictions contained in 2 deeds covering 76 Prospect Street and the Blackburn Road main campus. The relief sought is embraced within the permitted relief to be granted on an emergency basis under the emergency orders of the governor of the state of New Jersey, as promulgated and submitted with the petitioner's request. I'd be glad to answer any questions that anybody has, and Mr. Sabern here is also ready and willing to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Any questions from the board, or Mr. Galvin, you want to shortcut this for us?
Yes. I think based on the governor's orders, I think they should be able to do what they're proposing, regardless of what's in the record, regardless of what's been recorded. Because of the Emergency Powers Act, the governor has this phenomenal authority. The only thing that I would caution you, Mr. Sheehan, is that when the emergency is lifted next month, because we have the vaccine, that you have to return to put everyone back into the school as appropriate.
Well, in that regard, Mr. Galvin, if we get the vaccine or if the emergency is requested, as contained in the petition letter, it is requested that the permission of the board be continued to the end of a semester following whenever the emergency is lifted.
I don't really have a problem with that, but that's up to the board.
Yeah, my only concern is I just want to make sure we have a clear statement of what the end time is. I noticed that Bart's letter says for a period of time to the end of semester following the termination of the requirement for social distancing in New Jersey. So as long as is that a clear enough definition? Should we say to the end of the public health emergency? Is that more clear? I just want to make sure we have a clear ending time.
Yeah, I don't know why they wouldn't be able to just go back to, I mean, assuming we see normal within the next 6 months, why wouldn't they just go back to what was permitted? I think it's a belt and suspenders. Bart's trying to give them a chance to get back and put everything away properly, but I think the zoning officer is not going to pursue them and chase them down and give them a violation if it takes another week or two to get them back in the classroom. So I would just say until the emergency is concluded.
Until the governor's public health emergency.
Yeah.
Bart, is that all right? Where's Bart?
Well, if the governor declares the emergency satisfied but continues the requirement for social distancing,
How can he do that? How can he do that?
I don't, Dennis, I don't know with the power.
How about we play it this way? If the emergency's over and it's a problem, you call me and then we'll figure out what to do.
Does that work for you, Tim?
Yes, it does. I appreciate the support. We're just trying to do what's right for the health and safety of our kids and our faculty and staff.
100% with you. 100%.
Yeah, I could see.
Sorry, Joe, just let me finish. Just so you understand, I've been dealing with this for about 2 months now on opening bars. And I think everyone would agree that when the emergency's over, we want them to go back to the way they were. They can't stay out in the parking lot and continue the party. Okay. I don't think we care as much about I don't mean that we don't care about our children, but we're not worried about having the children outside the classroom. So, but when it ends, it ends. It goes back, everything goes back to the way it was. Sorry, Joe.
I accept if the legislature acts and does something such as maybe it should have done in the beginning, and that the governor's authority is only 14 days and not 5 months. If they pass something that says there will be social distancing and the governor's thing goes away, you've got to, this could continue for 30 years.
We'll just bring it back to the board and we'll keep it going.
Yeah, we can't anticipate every possible contingency here. I think it's reasonable to, have them come back if circumstances change.
And maybe we put a date certain for them to come back.
How about the end of the academic year? How about by the end of the academic year?
July 1 is fine.
Suggesting that whenever in any semester where it's terminated, that they'd have to the end of the semester.
Seems
okay
reasonable.
I'm okay with it if you are. But at some point we have a deed restriction that, we in my view, the deed restriction can only be lifted, and the law says the restriction can only be lifted by a court. So the deed restriction applies. What you're asking us is, understand they're looking for somebody to give them permission to do what they're planning to do. I'm happy for us to give them that permission because I think it's already covered by the governor's executive order, and I hate to see them get messed around when they're trying to make their plan. That's all. I'm open.
So I think I heard until the close of the semester where the emergency concludes or social distancing requirement concludes, Bart, if I capture that correctly. And
Yes.
Mr. Galvin, we're looking for a vote this evening to affirm this.
Yes, just to give them the authority to do this temporarily.
Okay.
I'm not even going to do a resolution. We'll just do a letter confirming that that the board so found.
Okay. Any
Want a
further?
voice vote, or do you want a roll call, Dennis?
We'll do a roll call because I think in case it becomes an issue.
Okay. All right. So with that, I suppose we're looking for a motion to grant the approval, as was just discussed, and will be memorialized in a
To the end
letter.
of to the end of the term once the emergency is concluded.
I will move that.
I will second that.
Okay, Chairman Spur,
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Newell,
Yes.
Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Ms. Schwartzstein,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
and Mr. Liketts.
Yes.
All right,
Can I just
Thank
get
you,
the
Mr.
spelling
Sheehan.
of the witness's name?
Yes, please spell your name, Tim.
Sure, certainly. It's Timothy, Timothy, Saburn, S-A-B as in boy, U-R-N as in Nancy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much, too.
Thank you, Mr. Saburn. Thank you, Mr. Sheehan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, let's see how Mr. Feldman's doing before we jump into our next case. I don't know. Mr. Feldman, are you listening in by chance?
Here I am. We still need a few minutes.
Well, we'll go on to the next.
Apologize.
That's all
We'll go
right.
to the next one. Thank you. All right, we'll call, and we're going to call 208 Kent Place Boulevard, Jennifer and Robert Walker. I believe Ms. Schwartzstein is recusing herself from this case. Is that correct? All right, great. All right. Mr.
Raise your right
and Mrs.
hand.
Yep.
The applicants, raise your right hand. I can see you. Raise your right hands.
I'm going to be testifying as well, John James.
Wait.
We're going to do the applicants first, Mr. James.
Do the applicants, okay? Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
State your full name for the record, spell your last name, ladies first.
Walker, W-A-L-K-E-R.
Sir, your full name?
Robert Walker, Walker, W-A-L-K-E-R.
All right. So you're now sworn in. Tell us a little bit about your case.
Sure. So of course, thanks for everybody's time. I hope everybody's healthy and safe and being well in these unprecedented times. We have lived in Summit now for 13 years. We have two 10-year-old children who attend the Washington school going into 5th grade. And unfortunately, we are outgrowing our living space on a daily basis. So as we, we're on a tight lot. We have an existing non-conforming house. So we've asked John James to kind of help us out with that. His reputation speaks for itself. We've gotten a couple of recommendations. Everybody has been very happy who's worked with John. And we're looking for him to help us out. He's going to hopefully add some space for us, but also increase the curb appeal of the house here on Kent Place Boulevard, keeping in line with, of course, the look and the feel of the neighborhood. We've spoken with both of our neighbors on either side of us who are extremely supportive, and we've gotten to know them very well over the years. We love our street. We love our neighbors. We love the neighborhood. We certainly would prefer to stay here and do this renovation versus looking to move elsewhere in Summit. So that's pretty much it. And thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the applicants from the board? While we're here, are there any members of the public, neighbors or what have you, in attendance for this case? Not seeing any. Okay.
All right.
All right.
God
Mr.
bless you.
James. Yeah.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your full name for the record, spell your last name.
John James, architect. Last name is James, James.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, Mr. James has appeared before the board numerous times, and I agree with the assessment of his clients that he is well-known and good at his profession.
Welcome, Mr. James. We accept your credentials. Do him proud.
Thank you very much.
No pressure.
Okay. So I have a screen that I would like to share. that will give you drawings for the Walker project here.
Has this been previously submitted, this exhibit?
Yes, these are copies of the exact drawings that we submitted to you already. And I'm just going to go through them tonight and kind of tell you what we're doing. We have an undersized existing lot here at 208 Kent Place Boulevard. It hasn't been previously renovated and upgraded to include many of the amenities that are prevalent in the neighborhood. And so we're proposing to enlarge the existing undersized kitchen and the family room on the first floor, and add a 4th bedroom and a master bathroom and closet on the 2nd floor. And these comprise portions of the house that are in a 2-story addition. And then we have a small 1-story breakfast room at the rear of the house. And we have a small mud room at the side of the house that provides a secondary entry into the house. And both of these additions and the new front canopy are intended to break down the structure of the house from a fairly flat 2-story facade. We are going to be doing upgrading and embellishments to the house, including new shingle siding, a new asphalt shingle roof. We're going to be putting a new patio in the backyard, and we're going to be widening the driveway on the front yard. The hardships in terms of this property is that it's an undersized lot in the R15 zone. It has a lot area of 9,375 square feet, where the minimum required lot size is 15,000 square feet. The existing property width is only 75 feet instead of the 90 feet required in the R15 zone. And the existing house is set in a non-conforming location relative to the side yard setbacks. All of the variances that we're here tonight for are derived from undersized lot in the zone and existing non-conforming location of the house. Our intent in trying to do this was to group the additions here in the back in the center of the property, so it would have the least amount of effect on the 2 adjacent neighbors here and here. And there is a backyard lot to an adjacent neighbor here where it doesn't really have any effect at all. The lot is heavily screened around the perimeter on the sides and the back, and we will go through the photographs that show that as well. Let me go through first and show you what we're doing, and then I'll itemize all of the variances that are required for your review. So you can see on the site plan here, the existing house and where we're doing an addition in the back and on the side here, and a new canopy at the front, and a widening of the driveway as it leads down to the street. With reference to the driveway, we are maintaining the existing curb cut, the existing driveway width across the right-of-way, and we're only doing a small enlargement on the owner's property. The floor plan for the new house is as follows. Central entry hallway. Can everybody see this, or should I make it larger? Is that better? There's a central entry hallway with a living room and dining room. We're doing butler's pantry and a kitchen addition behind that. Breakfast room in the middle. And we're taking the existing porch and we're converting that to the family room that's in approximately the exact same location. You can come in from the garage and there's no entry into the house from the garage currently. We're adding a new mudroom on the left-hand side so that you could enter from the garage into the mudroom and then come into the house. Up on the second floor, we're taking the existing bedrooms and we're expanding 2 bedrooms out off the back of the house. And we're adding a master bathroom at the front of the house off of the current master bedroom. And the other bedroom here in the corner remains. So it goes from a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house to a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house, which is much more in keeping with the existing neighborhood. Down on the basement floor, you can see the existing house. We're going to be tearing off the current porch addition, this area, and just building a new foundation under the new footprint, and just connecting that into the existing basement. When you see the front elevation of the house, you can see the new canopy that we're proposing here. We're going to increase the windows in the main front facade windows. We're going to add carriage style garage doors to the garage and do a low roof on it. And we're carrying a horizontal roof across the entire house that connects into the canopy. You can see here on the left, just above the garage, with a single window is where the master bathroom is being located. And then on the elevation down below the back of the house, you can see here the one-story breakfast room in the center of the back of the house with the kitchen windows on the left, the family room on the right, bedroom windows up above, a mudroom with an exit out to the backyard here, and the back windows of the master bathroom there. On the side facades of the house, this would be when you're looking at the front of the house, on the right-hand side, you can see we're maintaining the existing volume of the house. We're extending it back with a hip roof, with a window in an upstairs bedroom and French door in the breakfast room below. And then on the opposite side of the house, which is the left-hand side as you're facing it from the street, we're doing the same with the hip roof addition, windows in the family room and the breakfast room, a window in the garage, and a smaller window in the master bathroom up above. When we look at the photos of the property, I want to show you, this is the front elevation of the house. So you can see we're removing the current porch on the front and we're just doing an entry in the middle. Even though we are here for variances and we're doing an addition in the back of the house, the changes to the front of the house actually are a net decrease in the coverage in the front yard. You can see a picture here of the house at 208, and you can see the neighboring house immediately adjacent next door that has its garage and pretty much a two-story addition over that garage as well. So this is very similar to what's going on in that neighborhood. And this is a group of 3 lots right on Kent Place Boulevard that are all 3 undersized for the zone. So we're doing a house that's similar to the same scale of those 3 houses. You can see, and when you look at this from the front, you can see the mature trees and landscaping between our house and the neighbor here, where we're going to be doing our 2-story addition. And from the back, you can see the low screening from the 1-story that currently exists with those 2 trees again. This area in between here is where the new mudroom is going to be put in. And it's set back so that it more closely conforms to the side yard setbacks. But this is an existing like 8-foot setback, so it's impossible to make that conform. This is the back of the house. You can see the existing 1-story family room currently. The new back of the house is approximately 1 foot behind where that is. And then we have a 1-story breakfast room in the middle of that to break down the scale of the house. And then here you can see the mature trees and landscaping that's in the back of the yard, and another view showing it turning around to the opposite neighbors. In terms of the site plan that was prepared by Murphy and Hollows Associates, it shows all the items that I indicated on my plans in terms of the additions of the house, the new front. We are putting a dry well in to mitigate any of the water on the site, and it shows the new driveway, the curb cuts, and the same relationship out to the street. There were some jurisdictional comments that came in regarding the site plan, and I just wanted to clarify those questions. The first one, and we agreed to all of the engineering comments and will abide by all of those. But the first one is that they wanted to revise the drywall detail to extend the manhole to grade with a lockable cover, and we will certainly do that. They wanted us to confirm that we were not expanding the existing curb to the street, and we are showing that we are maintaining the existing curb and the Belgian block. And we are also confirming that our driveway is greater than the minimum 2 feet that's required to the side property line. So it meets the zoning ordinances from that point of view, and we intend to comply with all those variances. There were additional comments by Krista Anderson, since we did a direct
Maybe Mr. James, if we could just pause and off Mr. Dower, are there any further questions you have on the engineer's letter, just before we move on from that document?
No, I have nothing. He's answered every question.
Okay, excellent. All right, Mr. James, thanks. Please proceed.
So I'm going to go through just the variances that we're seeking for this property so that everyone can be aware of it. So in the backyard, because we are adding to the back of the house, and it's a short property as well as narrow, we need a variance for our rear yard setback of the house, and we need a variance for the rear yard setback of the accessory structure, which is really the terrace. So the rear yard setback is proposed at 38.1 feet, and we're requesting a variance for 6.9 feet. When we move to the terrace, we're requesting a variance. Instead of 25 feet, it was 23.9 feet, and it means a variance of 11.1 feet. That was one of Krista's notations on her comments. For the left side yard setback for the 1-story addition, that's where we're doing the existing mudroom right here, and we're tucking it in, and it was impossible to get it narrower and still have a functioning mudroom there. But we made it smaller, but the required is 15 feet, and we're requesting 13.4 feet, which means a variance of 1.6 feet just for the mudroom area. The left side setback for the 2-story addition is the master bathroom's being built directly over the 1-car garage for structural reasons. And that current setback there is 8.3 feet. So we are requesting, it's required to be 15. We're requesting a variance for 6.7 feet to align with the current first floor of the garage. With regarding building coverage, Krista had a comment here as well. So we are requesting a variance of 19.12%, which is 1,792 square feet. And it results in a variance of 1.12% or 104 square feet. And that includes the raised platforms for coming out of the rear breakfast area, as well as the platform for coming out of the back of the mudroom. And then in terms of the garage driveway at the front of the house, where we're expanding the width of the driveway, we're unable to expand the garage or create any more space there for our clients due to the setbacks. We're proposing to expand the garage from 13 feet wide to 18.75 feet. And that results in a variance for that additional width of 5.75 feet. And then lastly, there's a floor area ratio variance. And that is for the expansions on the back of the house in the center of the property, and for the expansion of the bathroom over top of the garage. And that variance is for a 25% is required. We're requesting 31.3%. which is a variance of 6.3% or 5.93 square feet. I just want to make a couple of comments. Again, in summary, the hardship for the property is really that it's an undersized lot. It's 9,375 square feet instead of 15,000 square feet. If we were a minimized size lot here in Summit, we wouldn't be here asking for any of these variances. The rear yard and rear yard accessory variances are really due to the shallowness of the lot. We have very mature landscaping back there that protects the views of the additions from all of our neighbors on both sides and in the back. The side yard setback of variances are due to the existing nonconformity of the current house. And where we could, we're doing better than the existing setback. And where we couldn't, we've matched that existing setback exactly. In terms of building coverage, we're asking for a very minimal variance of 104 square feet or 1.12%. And this is really for the footprint out in the back at that area. And for floor area ratio, we're asking for the 6.3%, which is a total variance of 593 square feet. But in terms of the bulk size of this house, our proposed addition is still 813 square feet under the allowable FAR for a minimum R15 zone. The driveway width, we only have a one-car garage that's barely usable, and we need the extra width to allow a second car to be there. The existing house obviously hasn't been updated. We're trying to do that within the character and the scale of the other houses in the neighborhood. The screening mitigates this. None of our variances would be required if we had a minimum size lot. The proposals we're doing are very much in keeping with the established character of the neighborhood and the immediate two houses in our same zone with the same issue next door. We've carefully crafted these designs so that we're matching the details of the house and we're upgrading the aesthetic of this at the front. We think this is a major improvement and we're asking the board to act favorably on our presentation.
Thank you, Mr. James, for your very thorough testimony and especially for addressing each of the variances as are requested. I'll open this to the board members. Any board members have questions of Mr. James with regard to this application?
Actually, I have a quick question. It's Liz Newell. Are you planning on putting a generator by the air conditioning units by any chance?
It's something that we haven't determined yet. We might be considering that.
Okay.
Bob, did you and Jennifer have a comment on that?
Yeah, that's certainly would be on the wish list, yes.
So the question is, the location is where it will be if you decide to purchase it, so we know, so we can.
Yes, I think the only location that would really work on this site would be to put it here on the side of the house immediately adjacent to the mudroom addition there.
So we need a note on a plan to that effect. That's where.
Okay. Our only other choice would be to put it in the side yard right here. So I'll be glad to note that and submit that change.
Yes, and the only other thing that I'll condition it on is when you have one of those, you have to run it every once in a while, and it's called exercising, and we'll have you do it. You can do it anytime you want, Monday through Friday from noon to 3 o'clock, so you're not adversely impacting anybody.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. I just think it's a good consideration considering Ken Place is always out of power. So
You are
good.
You are very right.
You're gonna be looking forward to tomorrow, kids.
Yeah, thank you for your question.
Yep.
Any other questions from members of the board? Okay, hearing and seeing none, we'll offer the Walkers an opportunity to close the case. Anything you'd like to say? Actually, let's pause for a moment. Any members of the public? Again, just to check one more time. Hearing and seeing
You're
none.
good.
All right, Mr. Walker, if you'd like to say anything in closing for the application?
No, just we appreciate your time and your consideration, and we're hoping that, like John said, the vote is favorable, and then we can move forward. And we appreciate everybody's time in these ever strange times. So,
excellent.
Thank you.
Mr. Galvin, would you just remind the board of the conditions before we move into deliberations?
I have 3. 1, compliance with the engineer's letter of July 6th. 2, AC unit is note to be on the plan as to its exact location, not AC unit.
Generator.
The what do you call it? Generator unit, the exact locations to be noted on the plan. And then 3, if they acquire the generator unit, it will be exercised Monday through Fridays, noon to 3. That's all I have.
Okay, excellent.
And I think Mr. James outlined good cause for a C1 variance. That's all.
All right, who would like to start us off on our deliberations?
I guess I'll start. I'll begin by complimenting Mr. James for an excellent presentation and for getting good favorable comments from the Historic Preservation Commission and Environmental Commission for keeping the architectural style of the neighborhood. So I want to compliment him for that. And I came into this looking at the number of variances and the size of some of the variances. That's always a red flag for me. But then you realize, and as was noted by Mr. James also, that this is the R15 zone. It's an undersized lot for the zone. And it is a significant addition, but the way the neighborhood is set up and the way the screening is set up, it's not going to have an adverse impact on any of the neighbors. So even though I was a little reluctant when I first, my first impression was maybe not positive based on the number and the extent of variances, I think I've been reassured by Mr. James' presentation that and some of the staff reports that it's not going to have an adverse impact and that's a good project and an improvement for the house and the neighborhood. So I would favor it.
Any other comments from the board, pro or con? All right. The only thing I would add to Mr. Yuko's fine summary there is the addition of stormwater management to this lot is a big plus. So I appreciate you making that investment as a part of this project. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Okay, heard Liz the motion and maybe David the second.
I second.
Right? All right, thank you, David. All right, Chris.
Okay, Vice Chairwoman Newell,
Yes.
Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Mr. Loikitz,
Yes.
Chairman Spur.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, Walkers. Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Have a great
Thank you
night.
very much.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Okay, you too. Bye now.
All right, Mr. Feldman.
Yes.
I think I see a witness walking somewhere right now. Is that her?
Yep. Hi. Yeah.
Yes.
Correct.
right.
Perfect timing.
Just take a moment and turn your car on, and that's fine with us if you'd like. But Mr. Feldman, so we're going to hear now, hopefully the conclusion of Bergen Capital Partners LLC 38-40 Park Avenue.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. This is the 5th matter in this case for the construction of a child care center. At the previous hearing, which was held on July 5th, Ms. Cafone, the planner, and Mr. Kurak, the traffic engineer, testified as to, provided answers from the public's questions. The public concluded its questions as to Mr. Kurak, and we were close to finishing up with Ms. Cafone, but we ran out of time. So we have Ms. Cafone here this evening as well. At the last hearing, a question came up concerning a hypothetical situation in which the child care center was substantially enrolled with infants, and how due to that fact, potentially, there could be excessive staffing at the center and therefore increased parking requirement at the center. And so for the record, there are only 2 infant rooms at the center. Each one has a max occupancy of 8 students, and that maximum occupancy is set by the child care regulations. And so for a lot of reasons, that hypothetical could never come to be where the entire center was filled with infants. But nonetheless, in an effort to put this issue to bed, we'd like to offer as a board condition that those 2 rooms, the infant rooms I just mentioned, would be the only infant rooms in the center. So that way, there would be a max occupancy for the infants of 16 infants.
Okay, I think we can accept that condition if you so choose.
Okay.
That's fine with us. Not hearing any objection from any of the board members, but we can proceed with your
Can
testimony.
you hear Mr. Spur?
Yep. You can proceed, Mr. Feldman. That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
If there's any questions at this time, I'd like to move forward with calling Ms. Cofone.
Ms. Cofone has been previously sworn.
Yes, recognizing I'm still under oath.
Hi, Ms. Cofone. So
Hey,
we'll go ahead, Mr.
Your
Galvin.
full name for the record. Spell your
Christine
last-
Nazaro, Nazzaro, Cofone,
Right.
Cofone.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Christine. Are you familiar with the case of Medical Center at Princeton versus Princeton Zoning Board?
I am, yes.
And in particular, are you familiar with how that court treated accessory uses as it applied to inherently beneficial uses?
Yes, there was a 3-pronged test.
All right. Would you mind describing for the board the 3-pronged test?
The test is simply that the applicant has to identify the proposed use and delineate the function, which in this case would be parking, that the applicant must establish how the proposed use is integrated into the core function of the inherently beneficial use. And here it's to provide for the ordinance required parking for the daycare facility to operate. And then the applicant must establish why the specific location of the proposed use is necessary to advance the purpose of the inherently beneficial use. And here you have not only the adjacency issue where it's convenient to the main lot, but also that you have a lot that's historically been used for employee parking. So that's essentially the test and its applicability in this particular case.
All right. And based upon the test, do you believe that the accessory use is a core function of the main use?
Without a doubt, we've spent an abundant amount of time talking about parking on this application. Mr. Korak has been brought up to testify and has addressed those issues previously. But yes, I do feel it is a core function of this application.
And do you believe thus that the accessory parcel is an inherently beneficial use?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Okay, with no further questions for Ms. Cofone, we will offer members of the public the opportunity to hopefully conclude their questioning. I see Yvonne's here. Yep. Yep. So perhaps if you'd like to start us with your questions, and then I see there's a couple other members of the neighborhood that will likely want to join as well.
All right. Good evening, Ms. Cofone. Ms. Cofone, what was the name of that case? Medical Center?
Medical Center at Princeton versus Princeton Zoning Board of Princeton Zoning Board.
What's the citation?
I'm not certain.
Do you know if it's a published or unpublished case?
If I may, for the benefit of the board, it is a published appellate division decision. Is 343 NJ Super 177, Aptiv 2001.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Feldman.
You're welcome.
All right. So let's talk about Lot 5, right? Lot 5, that's at 38 Park Avenue. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Lot 5, that's a separate lot from Lot 1, right?
Correct. Yes.
It's in a different zone than Lot 1, right?
It is.
It's an employee offsite parking lot.
It is.
Are there any child care center buildings or structures that are being built on lot 5?
No, it's simply a parking lot.
Are there any child care services that are being performed on lot 5?
Other than allowing for the staff to park there that will work at the childcare. So
Well,
it allows for staff parking.
Are the children ever going to be on lot 5?
They are not.
Are the children ever going to be cared for on lot 5?
They will not be.
And lot 5 is strictly for the employees' convenience, right?
It's teacher parking. It's staff parking.
Right. But it's exclusively for staff parking, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so none of the vendors who support the child care center are going to park there, right?
The families, you mean? The families who are dropping their children off?
Yeah, that's a good question. Are the families ever going to park there?
No.
Okay. So what about the vendors who support the learning experience? Are they ever going to, who provide supplies, are they ever going to park there?
That's an operational question. I didn't testify to that.
Do you know if they are?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. So if the board were to determine that lot 5 is not being used as a child care center and wasn't integral to the use of a child care center, then it wouldn't apply the inherently beneficial use doctrine to lot 5. Is that correct?
That's accurate.
Okay. And let's go with that situation. If that were to occur, the board would make that finding, then the presumption that the positive criteria had been met under the SICA test, that wouldn't apply in that scenario, would it?
It would not.
Okay. And continue with that scenario. The less stringent standard of proof that the applicant gets for the negative criteria under the inherently beneficial use doctrine, that wouldn't apply either to lot 5, would it?
It would not.
Okay. And if the board determines that lot 5 is not being used as a child care center and that the employee parking lot is not integral to and necessary to enhance the inherently beneficial use on lot 1, then the applicant must prove that there are special reasons for the grant of the D1 use variance. Is that correct?
Yes, and the board can rely on my prior testimony where I testified as to particular suitability and special reasons. That testimony is already in the record.
In that scenario, the applicant has to show that the proposed use for lot 5 inherently serves the public good, among other things, right?
In this situation where it's not an inherently beneficial use?
That's what we're talking.
I don't understand your question.
Yeah, we're going with the situation that the board determines with respect to the employee parking lot on lot 5, which is a separate lot from lot 1, that they make a determination that that's not a child care center, that the inherently beneficial use doctrine doesn't apply. That's the scenario I'm giving you. If they
right, I testified to that scenario last time. I've previously testified to that scenario.
I just want to clarify that if the board makes that determination, then the applicant has to show the standard of proof changes, and the applicant has to show that the proposed use for lot 5 inherently serves the public good. Is that correct?
No.
Yes.
No.
No, not inherently. No.
Stop. The law, to me, the law is clear. Okay. You have to, in order to be successful under the Medici standard, under what you have to show that there are special reasons provided. And Christine's telling you that she's already testified in that nature. She's taken, wait a minute, I'm talking. She provided us with testimony both ways. And then the other thing that was said that's not correct is the negative criteria, whether you're an inherently beneficial use or you're a regular old use variance, You have to be able to meet both prongs of the negative criteria, which is you have to be able to show that there isn't a substantial impact on the neighbors, and you have to be able to reconcile the deviation from the master plan.
Right.
Now, they're also throwing a wild card in here for you, which is that under the Princeton medical case, that sometimes ancillary uses like parking lots or offices are considered part of the main structure. The advantage to an inherently beneficial use is that you don't have to meet the special reasons criteria. In this case, so that's an advantage or a disadvantage for the applicant in normal use variance, that they have to still prove the special reasons. The other thing that's going on here is this use has been used as a parking lot for an extremely long time, right?
Mr. Galvin, I mean, can I continue with my questions? Because you're making the case for the applicant.
I'm clarifying the law, okay? And I'm not going to have you or Ms. Cofone mistake the law and misexplain it to my clients.
I can ask her questions and she can provide the answers.
I know
you didn't interrupt Mr. Feldman when he was asking her questions, and she was given 10-minute speeches.
You want to raise this on appeal, you'll raise it on appeal. All I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make sure that we go down the path properly. That's all. Go ahead. And I'm trying to help you also. Everything I'm saying is true and I can back it up.
Well, you say it's ancillary. Ms. Cofone says it's a necessary to enhance the beneficiary use. That's what she testified to. And the board can make a determination of whether lot 5, which is exclusively an employee parking
Objection,
lot.
these are not questions.
That's not helping me, Mr.
I can respond to Mr. Galvin's points. Or if I could continue with my questions.
Sure. The other thing is, don't use the word, people all the time use the word inherently when they shouldn't. Inherently should only be used when you're talking about the daycare center itself. Well, the word inherently shouldn't be just thrown in because it's out of the legal context and it confuses things, all right?
I'm using the Medici standard. My understanding under the Medici standard, if the inherently beneficial use doctrine doesn't apply, Ms. Cofone, then one of the things the applicant has to prove is that it serves the public good to get the variance. Is that correct?
They have to provide special reasons. So
okay.
One of the special reasons is to promote the general welfare.
Thank you. And there's also another aspect to it under the Medici standard for the special reasons. There's an enhanced quality of proof that it must be demonstrated to indicate that the grant of the requested use variance is not inconsistent with the intent and purpose of the master plan and the zoning ordinance. Is that correct?
You have to reconcile the governing body's continued omission of the use with the zoning ordinance and the master plan is the test.
Okay. And that's a basis to reject an application if the board makes a determination that lot 5 is not an inherently beneficial use and is not necessary to the use on lot 1, correct?
No, that's not correct, because they could find that it's not inherently beneficial, but then they could find that we substantiate the proof for the D1 variance. So that's not correct.
But isn't part of, if Medici applies, don't you have to demonstrate that the grant of the requested use variance is not inconsistent with the intent and purpose of the master plan and the zoning ordinance?
You have to reconcile the continued omission of the use with the master plan and zoning ordinance.
Okay. Chris, I submitted an additional exhibit today, exhibit N5. I think we labeled it. If we could put that up on the screen.
Hold on.
Thank you. Can we just rotate it?
Yep, gotcha.
Okay. So let's see. You know what, Chris? I don't want to use that picture right now. Could we go down? Okay, go down. Or I think it's the picture of lot 5.
That's not lot 5.
Yeah, here we go. There it is. That's the one. If we could just turn that.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right. Ms. Cofone and Mr.
Galvin,
Galvin.
would you mind having the objector authenticate the photos? I also may add that he just submitted them just a few hours ago. I object to that.
We're going to ignore that objection. Go ahead. He would have been able to introduce it at a normal hearing without.
Fair enough. If you could authenticate the photographs, that would be helpful.
Sure. No problem. Mr. Galvin, do you want me to be sworn in to authenticate the photo? I think I was previously sworn.
Yeah, go ahead, do it. If you're previously sworn, just state your full name for the record, spell your last name.
Sure. Ivan, I-V-A-N, last name, Novich, N-O-V-I-C-H, 53 Park Avenue.
Did you take this photo or is it Google?
Oh, no, I took it.
Okay.
I took it at approximately 8:30, 9 o'clock this morning.
All right. It's
Okay.
authenticated. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Galvin. Ms. Cofone, do you recognize this photo?
Yes, it appears to be lot 5.
And this, again, lot 5, this parking area, this is in a residential zone, right?
Correct.
And this parking lot, this parking area, that's not lawfully zoned for parking, is it?
It's in an R5 zone. No, it is not.
Are you aware of the town ever in taking any type of enforcement action against Birdsall for this usage?
I'm not.
Okay. Do you know the reason why they never enforce it?
I don't know.
And how many cars do you see in the photo? Vehicles, I should say. How many vehicles do you see?
It looks like 3 trucks. There's no cars. Well, there's a car on the photo, but it's not on the property.
Right.
Looks like there's 3 trucks on the site right now.
Yep, I'm talking about in the parking area. You see 3 trucks.
I see 3 trucks.
And do you know who those trucks belong to?
I don't.
Do you know how many vehicles regularly use that lot?
I don't.
Do you know how often vehicles come in and out of that lot?
I don't.
If I told you that these vehicles were in there for the entire weekend and never moved, would you, do you have any knowledge that what I just said is incorrect?
I don't know.
Do you know if vehicles like these stay in there for prolonged periods of time?
I don't know. It's an employee parking lot for Birdsall. That doesn't mean that somebody else couldn't use it tomorrow for something else. I don't know.
So do you know whether residents in the neighborhood use this lot?
The lot is a employee parking lot, so I can't speak to what the residents in the neighborhood do with someone else's property. I don't know.
Okay. Well, do you know if Birdsall allows the residents to use the property?
I don't know. They're not my client. I don't know what Birdsall's arrangement with their neighbors is.
Okay. Do you know how much activity is in this lot?
I've asked and answered that question several times now. I don't know.
Okay. Do you see any garbage in the lot?
The pictures, it's too hard to say. I don't know. I can't answer that. If there's any garbage in the lot, I don't know.
Do you see any debris that you can see from the picture?
The back, I don't, it's too hard to tell. Looks like dark shadows under the trees. I don't know what's in back of the trucks. I can't answer that based on the picture that's on the screen.
You can't answer whether you see anything?
That's the answer. That's it. She can't say.
Okay.
She's in the car right now using her phone. I think
Right.
she's doing what she can.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Galvin. That's exactly right. I don't see any,
But
I don't want to answer
I
yes
have
or
a
no
good-
because I can't see.
I have a good laptop and I'm having trouble seeing anything other than shadows and light. There's light hitting the pavement.
Well, I think Chris just zoomed in for us. Chris, you want to zoom in some more?
But even still, I can't see anything.
It might
Thanks,
distort.
yeah. Well, why don't we ask the witness if she can, if it helps her, Mr. Gal?
The problem for me, Mr. Novich, is that there's still shadows under what looks like I'm looking at the truck, the white truck. So what would be to my right of the white truck, there are shadows under those trees. So I don't know if there's garbage and litter in those shadows because I can't see. The picture is not clear enough for me to answer that.
Is there a reason why you have to raise your voice with?
Ivan, at some point, you should just testify. If you think there's trash there, tell us.
Well, I thought these were questions. I'm going to ask you, Ms. Cafone. I've lived there for 14 years, and I've never seen this area in a state of disrepair in terms of garbage or anything like that. Do you have any knowledge that what I just said is incorrect?
I don't.
All right. Okay, Chris, can we go to the other pictures? Go to the first picture if you wouldn't mind. All right, and if we could just turn that, thank you. So, all right, so Ms. Cafone, the last time you testified, I believe you gave the testimony that there was parking on both sides of the street, and that and that on one side of the street it was limited, but there was parking on both sides of the street. Do you recall that testimony?
I don't recall that testimony, and I think the testimony on parking should be directed to the traffic engineer.
Okay, I'm just responding to your testimony. So do you see that? Do you recognize this photo as in front of the proposed site on lot 1?
It looks to be the street frontage in front of lot 1.
Yep, and you see the sign that says no parking at any time, right?
I see it.
Okay, and then Chris, we go to the other photos of the parking signs. Yep, right there. Okay, Ms. Cafone, do you see this is another picture of Park Avenue on the same side of the street as the proposed lot, but further down the street? Do you see that?
I do.
Okay, and you see the sign says no parking anytime?
I see it.
Okay, so can we agree that there's no parking on the side of the street near the proposed lot 1 post site?
Again, I think you should direct that question to the traffic engineer because I'm not sure about both sides of the street. So I think Mr. Korak should answer that question.
Okay. Can you dispute what I'm saying, that there isn't parking on the same side of the street at the site and near the site on Park Avenue?
Based on that photo, it would look like there's a restriction on parking.
Okay. And Chris, can we go to the other pictures that show the other side of the street with there's some signs there about 1 hour parking? There we go. And Ms. Cafone, do you recognize this photo as the other side across from the proposed site on lot 1, the other side of the street?
I do, yes.
And you see that there's restrictions on parking on that side of the street?
1 hour parking, which would certainly be enough time for somebody to park there, drop their child off, or pick their child up.
Okay, so you're saying the parents could park there?
Sure. It's
okay,
on-street parking.
Can we go to the next slide? Okay. Do you recognize that this is directly across the street from the proposed site?
I do.
Okay, and this is also 1 hour parking?
Yes.
Okay, and do you know what's directly across the street from the proposed site on lot 1?
What's directly across is a retail building.
How many businesses are in that building?
There's 4 or 5.
Okay. And
there's a hair salon, Domino's. There's a hair salon, an eatery, a Domino's pizza, and I believe there's one other use.
Yeah, so there's a laundromat, there's a Banderas restaurant, which is a Costa Rican restaurant that serves the neighborhood. There is a Domino's Pizza, and there's a hair salon, right? Yep.
Yes.
Do you know if the customers and employees for those small businesses park out front on Park Avenue?
I don't know. It's only 1 hour parking though, so I would imagine they would have the same problem my client would have, and that their employees would have difficulty parking there during long shifts because of the 1 hour prohibition.
But if you were coming to pick up a pizza, or coming to have lunch, or coming to use the laundromat, or coming to get your hair done, or your nails done, you could certainly
Or
park.
coming to drop off your child, sure, I would agree with you.
But
We agree
you
on
would
that.
agree. You would agree that coming to drop off your child, you're already going to have to compete with all these small businesses that already use this area, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Let me ask you this: the small businesses that we mentioned, the 4 or 5 that you talked about, do you know if any of them have parking lots?
It looked to me when I was out to the site, there was parking in behind, like where the Domino's is on the end, but I don't know if that was for the residential uses that are above it. There's definitely some off-street parking there, but it looks to me like those businesses rely on-street parking.
All right, and then Chris, can we just go to the photos of the Domino's truck, please? And Ms. Cafone, you're saying the parents could park on the right side of the street where there's 1 hour parking
And walk across the street, sure.
with their children?
Yes, this is a walkable neighborhood. I believe you were the one who said people walk in this neighborhood all the time. So I don't see why that would be a problem at all.
The street with children?
So with the congestion in the cars, you don't see any potential safety concerns with dropping off children on the right side of the street and having them walk across?
We also have on-street, and I think you should direct these issues to our traffic engineer. Our traffic engineer provided extensive testimony about the drop-off procedures on site, and that was his testimony. And I think you should direct those questions to Mr. Korek.
Okay. So with respect to the next photo, do you see that?
When you say the next photo, are you talking about the one with the Domino's truck in it?
Right. I think the last time I showed you a picture of a truck was actually one of your exhibits, and it was, you couldn't recognize it as the Domino's truck, but do you recognize in this photo that there is a Domino's truck parked outside the Domino's?
It looks like a Domino's truck, yes.
Okay. And is it fair to describe that as a large truck? Chris, do you want to go to the other photo that shows the front of the truck? I think it's maybe further down. Thank you. It's like a Mack truck, right?
It looks like a tractor trailer.
Tractor trailer. Thank you.
Yep.
And do you know how often that I'll represent, again, to authenticate this video, I took this at the same time I took the other photos, which is about 8:30, 9 o'clock this morning. That, by the way, coincides right at the time, one of the peak times that Mr. Korek testified about in terms of dropping the children off, correct?
That was a 2-part question. I don't know when you took this photo.
Okay.
And I think, again, if you have questions on Mr. Korek's testimony, you should ask him those questions.
All right. You see the Domino's truck. Do you know how often the Domino's truck parks out front of Domino's? Do you know how often?
No.
Okay. If I told you it occurred on a regular weekly basis.
Alvin, I don't understand how any of these questions have to do anything with planning. It would even be tough for the traffic engineer to sit there and answer these questions, but for a planner, it just makes no sense.
I only have a couple more.
It doesn't matter.
Well, she's talking about, that this is a suitable site and that this site works and that there's no danger or detriment to the community, and that actually having this parking area promotes the community. And the community is in a pretty tough position as it is, and it's a fine balance, and this is really going to tip the scales. And I want to see, I think it's fair to ask her these questions to see if, in her opinion, this changes anything.
But she's relying upon the testimony of the traffic engineer who's already testified. Her opinion as to the variances as to traffic are based upon the testimony of the engineer who's already testified, and you've already questioned him. So I think we're well past these issues.
Well, I think one of the key.
Time out. Let me talk.
I'm almost done, Mr. Galvin.
Yeah, I'm agreeing, Ivan. I think, it's really, I think we all have to keep in mind one important thing. This is not completely normal. All right? We're on Zoom.
Wrong here.
Who's beeping?
My car is melting. I'm turning the air on.
All right. We're all learning stuff here. So we have to give a little latitude. Now, Ivan, you said you only had a few questions left. In light of that, I think you should ask them. And
I had a few questions.
I agree. Just so you understand, I think Mr. Feldman's making a good point. There are some things here that you're asking Christine that are better for other witnesses, but you're making points also about one way. Who's making that noise? Okay.
All right. Let me move on then, Mr. Galvin. In the interest of time, move on. Now, Ms. Gaffone, I want to ask you some questions about the inherently beneficial use doctrine, which you testified at length about in the past couple of sessions. Now, a zoning board, they're not required or bound to grant a variance for inherently beneficial use, right? Rather, the board must balance the benefits and the burdens of the requested variance using the SECA factors. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And are you familiar with NJSA, New Jersey Statute 40:55D-70D?
I am.
Okay. And doesn't that provide no variance or other relief may be granted under the terms of this section, including a variance or other relief involving an inherently beneficial use, without a showing that such relief can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and will not substantially impair the intent and the purpose of the zoning plan and zoning ordinance. Is that what the statute provides?
That word is verbatim from the statute, yes.
Thank you. And in cases where the detrimental effects of an inherently beneficial use outweigh, so even when you have an inherently beneficial use, when the detrimental effects of an inherently beneficial use outweigh the public benefit, the zoning board is authorized to deny the requested variance. Isn't that correct?
If there are identified legitimate detrimental effects, then the board can deny the variance.
Okay. And so let me ask you this. I want to ask you some questions about the positive criteria of the inherently beneficial use doctrine, right? So if a child care center by statute is an inherently beneficial use, and under the inherently beneficial use doctrine, there's a presumption that's created and that the positive criteria is satisfied, right?
Yes.
Okay, but that's just a presumption. It's not a conclusion, right? It's a presumption, and that presumption can be rebutted, right?
My understanding when you're dealing with inherently beneficial use is that there is a presumption that the positive criteria is satisfied.
Okay. And let me ask you this, with respect to the positive criteria, okay? I'm not arguing with you that if it's inherently beneficial use, that the positive criteria, there's a presumption, all right? So I just want to say that from the outset, but let me ask you this. Can the positive criteria be given less weight, not that it doesn't exist, but less weight if the board determines that there are other child care centers in the community that meet the public's need for this use? Can they give it less weight? I'm not saying it doesn't exist.
The applicant has no burden to demonstrate need for the use in the community in order for the board to find that it's an inherently beneficial use and we satisfy the positive criteria.
That's not what I asked you. What I asked you was the amount of weight that the board has to give the positive criteria. So the fact that Summit has numerous child care facilities already that are meeting the needs of this community, isn't that relevant to the weight of the positive criteria here?
I already answered the question in the way I'm going to answer it, Mr. Novus. I'm not going to change my answer. The board, we do not, as an applicant, have a demonstration to satisfy that there is a need for the use in the community.
So you're not going to answer whether the board can lessen the weight given to that, right?
I think she's
I
answered.
already answered the question.
Okay, and I think your answer speaks volume. Now, let me ask you this. Is it relevant to the weight given to the positive criteria that the fact that the learning experience is a for-profit commercial enterprise that has hundreds of childcare centers and generates tens of billions of dollars every year?
Objection.
We're not talking about a mom and pop childcare center from Summit. We're not talking about the Y, which is a non-for-profit. We're talking about a corporate giant that is coming into the neighborhood.
Mr. Novich, what's your question here? Sorry.
Is it relevant to the weight of the criteria that they should give, the board should give to the positive criteria? That's my question.
No, we're not going to answer that.
Okay, that's fine, Mr. Galvin. I don't have any further questions.
Mr. Feldman's objection. It's an inappropriate position to take. We never discuss things the way you're discussing them about mom and pop versus big business. It's inappropriate.
Well, Mr. Galvin, let me ask you this. Are you familiar with the case of 636 LLC versus Township of Woodbridge, Appellate Division 2014, in which a 3-judge panel on the Appellate Division and a Law Division judge affirmed the zoning board's denial of a use permit for a child care center that is strikingly similar to the one here, involving 150 children with a single-story child care center that was only 8,000 square feet. And they had 4 witnesses, 3 of whom were experts, that the court said the board had the discretion to reject their testimony. And the court held that less weight is given on the positive criteria because there were other childcare centers in the community that were already servicing that need. And that just because you have the inherently beneficial use doctrine doesn't mean that it's a done deal and that the board can make a determination that the detriments and the dangers to the community are outweighed. And the board on those factual determinations has substantial deference that the courts are going to give it on those factual findings.
Okay, now give me the site.
I gave you the site. It's 636. Hold on, I'll give it to you again. 636 Inman LLC versus Township of Woodbridge Adjustment, Appellate Division, February 5th, 2014.
No,
And
what's
I
the
don't have
site?
the book site, but you can easily find the case online.
If it's unpublished, we're not using it. Okay, it's Inman versus Woodbridge.
Inman LLC versus Township of Woodbridge, and you had a 3-judge panel. Judge.
It doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
I need to figure out. If
I know it
it's
doesn't matter, but I
unpublished.
think it's important for the board to hear.
You can't talk at the same time because you won't be on the record.
I think it's important for the board to hear that that is what 4 judges in the state of New Jersey said 6 years ago, in a strikingly similar situation.
Steve, can I have an adjournment? Can we, not an adjournment, can I have a timeout?
A recess? You want to take a
Yes.
few minutes? Yeah, let's,
Case up.
we'll take 5 minutes or so here.
Interpreted this way.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Galvin, Mr. Feldman, and Mr. Novich. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Should I pull this up? Inman versus Woodbridge. He's technically right. You can introduce testimony showing.
Hey, you guys are on speaker. You're still.
Hey Dennis, how we doing?
I read the case.
Back on, you tell me when to go back on the record.
Okay, let's get.
Whenever you guys are ready.
Yeah, we'll let everyone come in. Thanks, Michelle.
Select everybody.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm good.
I don't want to know. Who's 917?
Steve, just so you know, with this weather, I'm likely to lose internet connection. It's
Thanks,
coming
Leslie.
down. It's coming down in buckets out here.
Okay. So Mr. Feldman is back. I'm just looking for Chris Nicola. Sorry if I don't see him. You here, Chris? Okay, cool. All right, Mr. Feldman, we're going to begin again. Mr. Galvin, do you have anything you want to say with respect to the case that Mr.
Yeah.
Novich cited?
I reviewed
We're
the
back on,
case.
Michelle.
I congratulate Mr. Novich for finding the case. I think it makes a lot of arguments that he wants to make. Unfortunately, it's an unpublished case. And that's why I'm not acquainted with it, as normally any published case in the last few years, I would have known it. So the court is not stating things here that are considered are backed up and considered the law in other cases. They do say that they did not entirely agree with the law decision's reasoning. In that case, the board applied the Sika balancing test and found against the child care center and did exactly what Ivan said, which was to put it on a sliding scale for the weight of the use. Although this case is different because the use variance in this case is only for the parking lot. So it's not, the case is useful. I think there are things you can learn from it, Mr. Novich, but it's not something that the board can rely on because it's unpublished. And I don't think it's directly on point. We don't have all the facts other than the fact that it's a inherently beneficial use daycare that was denied. The other thing that's interesting in this case, and I'll tell you, it's the minority view of inherently beneficial uses is that how many good things are too many? How many hospitals make an inherently beneficial less beneficial? But the courts never imposed that weighing process on us on the special reasons. So,
Mr. Galvin, if I may, the way I read the case is the court expressly rejected the idea that you need to show anything beyond the presumption that the inherently beneficial use gives you. And they specifically rejected the law division's holding in that regard. And they also rejected some language in Cox. They said, no, it's once you have the inherently beneficial use, it's established. Now, you may still lose on the Sika balancing. And that's what it did occur ultimately in this case. But as to the positive criteria, the appellate division said, it's done, it's established, and there's nothing more to be said about that. And so what I think Mr. Novich is saying is we should be relitigating the positive criteria here. And I would suggest that does not need to be done. And this case does not stand for that position.
So can I respond?
yeah,
Okay.
but don't go too crazy because we're telling you it's an unpublished case.
I haven't gone crazy at all. So with respect to the case, I'm a practicing lawyer for 24 years. I cite unpublished cases all the time and courts accept them all the time. And Mr. Galvin is right. It's not binding authority, but it's certainly persuasive. It's persuasive when you have a zoning board in Woodbridge, when you have a law division judge, and you have 3 appellate division judges, all of whom I've appeared before who are in good standing, are great judges. And that case, which I had my library department just double check again, still has not been overturned. There's no negative reference to it whatsoever. So Mr. Galvin's right. It's not binding, but it is persuasive, and the board can consider it. Now, with respect to the positive criteria, again, this is why I asked Ms. Cofone. I was upfront and clear. Contrary to what Mr. Feldman's saying, I'm not relitigating the positive criteria. I'm acknowledging the positive criteria is there, but to say that it's not relevant to how much weight the board should give to the positive criteria when you have childcare centers where there's numerous childcare centers and the needs of the city are being met, that positive criteria should be how it goes to the weight that the board can give to that, especially when you have the non-for-profit Y just 2 blocks away that was in one of the applicant's own exhibits.
Is this testimony or deliberation or argument or what? What are the questions in this?
No.
So he's arguing over the case he submitted, Joe. It's okay.
I'm just responding.
No, it's not okay. It's enough already.
All right.
And again, the case did not allow for testimony regarding other childcare centers. The appellate division expressly stated that that's irrelevant. Positive criteria is established, it's established. You can seek a balancing, but that's it.
Let's do this. Let's move on.
Yep. Okay. I didn't have any further questions. Again, Mr. Feldman, I'm not arguing the positive criteria isn't met. The question is how much weight you give it. And with that,
now, where are we at, Mr. Feldman? Do you have any other witnesses? You're all done, right?
All done.
Okay.
We want to ask if there are any other neighbors or objectors here with questions for this witness.
Thank
Aside from Mr. Novich. Mr. Baldacchini, yep, I see you there. Can you state your name and your address as well for the record?
Carolyn Baldacchini, B as in Baker, ALD as in David, ACC, HINI.
And just questions, and your address as well at this time. Ms.
And I want to make sure I'm like asking, so a lot of the applicants, professional people have spoken, so I want to make sure that I'm asking a question to who is the question directed towards? What is the invitation?
You're limited to Ms. Cofone. You're limited to what she testified to.
Okay.
So if you don't have any questions for the planner as to her planning testimony, then you just want to wait to the conclusion.
So I do have a question, and we don't have, we're just simple neighbors. So I hope y'all have understand. I understand y'all are volunteers, and I really appreciate everything y'all do on the zoning board. And I know it can sometimes get frustrating, but we're just neighbors. We don't have, any professional planners or anyone behind us. So if we kind of do things out of order or incorrectly, I apologize in advance.
Listen, I'm okay, but you have to understand this is a bit of a court proceeding.
Yes, of course. So I have a question for Ms. Cofone, and if she's not the right person.
I'll help you. Just go ahead and ask the question, Carolyn. Let's get done.
So we had talked about 75 to 90 cars and 23 staff members of the facility. Staff, and what I'm trying to understand, because this is a facility that is open from 6:30 in the morning until 6:30 in the evening, Monday through Friday. So one of my questions is, are staff full-time?
Galvin, objection. These questions were asked by this objector at the very last hearing to the traffic consultant. And she asked him an extensive number of questions. And then you asked, do you have anything further? And she said no. And we'd like to move on regarding these kinds of questions.
Sorry, I didn't understand. What I'm trying to understand is what I'm confused about. And I'm going to be really honest because I'm really confused. I don't understand if we're talking about 23 positions in the facility, or 23 human beings? Because it could be 23 positions that are filled by numerous people that have part-time, that are hired in part-time or hired in hourly
Greg, do
wages.
you have an answer to that?
Can you repeat the question one more time?
We want to know if it's 23 positions or if we're talking about 23 employees.
But where are you getting the number 23 from?
I don't know.
No, 19 teachers and 2 administrators.
It's,
That
it's
actually makes, no, 21. What were the numbers?
20, correct, 21 teachers and 2 administrators, correct.
21 administrators, 2, yeah, that's 23.
Okay.
Are they 23 people?
At one time?
Oh,
No, not at one time. No, I don't want to get confused.
It is
I
23
really don't want to get
different people,
confused.
correct.
Excuse me?
23 different individuals, yes.
Okay, and will there be more than 23?
No.
So you have a facility that's open 6:30 in the morning until 6:30 in the evening, Monday through Friday, that's 12 hours a day. Available to parents with their children 12 hours a day. And you have 21 caregivers and 2 administrators. And those are the only ones you have, and they will be working, if your facility needs them, they will be working 12 hours a day?
Typically they don't work 12-hour days, they work shifts. And so the most it would be at any given time would be the 23.
Okay, so do parents make an appointment ahead of time? Or do parents pay a monthly fee and you say, you know, you can bring your kid anytime between 6:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. without an appointment?
I don't understand. When you say an appointment, you mean, how do you enroll your child? Is that your question?
No, let's say I enroll my child and I pay the 2-week, monthly fee or every 2-week fee.
You know, I gotta tell you, Carolyn, I want to help you, but this was all explained by the, many hearings ago by the people who run the daycare. They told us when they come, when they go.
I really appreciate your understanding. I've gone through the transcripts, the fine tooth comb. So
You're
let
not
me,
getting the answer, Carolyn, you're not going to get that answer. It's not fair.
okay, so I'll explain where I'm coming from.
And here's what I would ask you nicely is, I think we're almost done and you should just go under oath and tell us how you feel about this case. And I think that would be a lot smarter. Perpetually asking questions got to come to an end at some point. The board has the information that it needs to resolve this case. And
So
we want to
23
hear
positions,
from
23
you.
people. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have a question for Ms. Cafone? All right. Now, what were you saying, Chairman? What else you want to do here?
Oh, we just wanted, that was the last of Mr. Feldman's witnesses, as we presume. So we now want to open the floor to anyone to provide their opinion on the case.
Correct.
Or we offer Mr. Feldman the opportunity to conclude with a statement.
So who would like to comment?
Mr. Novich, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. But I don't want to, if the other neighbors want to talk.
We can let you begin. Thank you, Mr. Novich.
Okay, sure. All right. So let me start off by thanking everyone. I want to thank you for your service. This isn't an easy job you have. And I want to thank you for your patience, for your consideration. This is, I know, tempers flared at times and emotions get heated, but this is very personal to us. We live here and we wouldn't be here if we didn't really honestly believe that it was going to have a detrimental impact on our community. And I know I speak for the other neighbors who are on this call, as well as the neighbors who couldn't attend. There's some elderly folks who aren't tech savvy, other people who, some language issues. And, I've spoken to numerous people in the community. I'm sure the others on this call could share it as well, that there's nobody who has come back to me and said that this is a good idea for our community. So again, I want to thank everybody for hearing our concerns and listening to us. I mean, the way I look at this is the use variance should be denied for lot 5. Lot 5 is a separate lot from lot 1. Lot 5 is not being used for a child care center. I know they cited this new case, but I don't think an employee parking lot is essential and integral to running a child care center. None of the childcare services are being performed on this lot. There are no auxiliary buildings on this lot. None of the vendors or suppliers are coming to this lot. The parents aren't coming to this lot. This is strictly a convenience for the employees. It's not essential or integral to the child care center, which is in a separate lot, and it's exclusively lot 5 being used for employee parking. You know, they're just basically trying to piggyback on lot 1's inherently beneficial use and extend it to lot 5. And there are no benefits to this community caused by, you know, allowing a 10-employee parking lot to the community. If anything, this is not going to do a service to the community. This is going to do a disservice to this community. We already have extra traffic, and it's going to create extra traffic. We already have a congested area. We have safety concerns to the children who live. This is a highly residential area. We have lots of children. We have lots of children who are playing on Cottage Lane. They said they were going to use that on Cottage Lane. And you know, these are people who, I can tell you, because I've lived here for 14 years, these are low income, middle class people. A lot of them, you know, are, you know, different backgrounds, and, you know, aren't necessarily going to be here to speak for themselves and feel like they have a voice. So I think we have to look out for them. You know, there's allowing this 10-employee parking lot is going to create extra traffic. It's going to create extra noise. It's inconsistent with the residential area of this R5 zone. There are no employee parking lots in this zone. You know, none of those stores across the street, which are small businesses, they're not these corporate giants like the Learning Experience, which generated in 2018 $30 million. You know, this isn't like a mom and pop type operation that's responding to the needs of this community. And let's talk about lot 5. You know, they've said, oh, it's historically been used as an employee parking lot. You know, I've lived here for 14 years. I've seen neighbors use that lot. I've seen people coming in and out of Banderas use that lot. And what somebody said this perfectly, that this is really, it's not about the use, it's about the size. It's about the intensity of the usage. You know, in my 14 years being here, in terms of seeing bird salt and the level of activity there, it's a very low level activity. You know, you hardly see, maybe you see a couple plumbing trucks here and there. Maybe you see a couple cars in that lot, but it's low volume. It's really low volume. And what they're talking about is seriously dialing this up. And we already have this fragile balance in this community. I've showed you the pictures of the Domino's trucks. What we didn't talk about, what we haven't talked about, is Frank's trucks, Frank's Tree Supply, which is right across the street. Those trucks come out on a regular basis. I mean, we have cars coming in and out on a regular basis. And, you know, you really don't have to, even Mr. Korek's study seemed to acknowledge this. If you look at the traffic report, and I ask you to go back and look at it, for all its defects, on page A5 of the traffic report, in that one day on July 30th, the height of the summer, when a lot of people are away, even Mr. Korek on the turning movements, and again, he didn't highlight this in his testimony, shows almost 937 trips in and out of this intersection. Think about that, 937 cars. And what Mr. Korek said is, and you know he lowballed it, that's his job. He's a paid expert. What he said is, well, putting this is going to put in another 250 trips in and out throughout the day. And I mean, what you're going to do is we have a beautiful, wonderful, diverse community here. We have children, we have small businesses, and we're just going to tip the balance here, and it's going to cause irreparable harm, and it's going to be really detrimental to the community. So look, I don't think, I've given you, you can follow my logic and reasoning why the inherently beneficial use doctrine doesn't apply to lot 5. But even if you were to apply it, that's not the end all be all. You still all have to do the weighing factors under SECA. And if you find that the detrimental effects, which are substantial, outweigh the benefits for this child care center, then you can deny the application. It's not a given just because it's inherently beneficial use. I mean, the parking situation on this is a real problem. We have a major problem here. We have one side of the street parking. You can't park on the side of the street where lot 1 is. On the other side of Park Avenue, you have limited 1-hour parking, and the small businesses don't have employee parking. They don't have customer parking. They're already using that spot. I mean, on a typical day, and I think I put it in as an exhibit, you see cars lined up and down the side of that road. I mean, if you look at page 8A of Mr. Korak's own traffic study, page 8A, it actually shows of the 9 streets that envelop this site, 6 of them have serious parking restrictions. So we're talking about, you know, a situation going into it that already has a lot of difficulties, a lot of problems, and that's the situation we're going into. Now, look, you as the board have the power to, you have the discretion to reject the paid expert's testimony. And I think you should, I really do. You can make that credibility determination. They've tried to minimize the size and scale of this 2-story, 11,000 square foot structure. They've tried to minimize the scale of the operations. I think one board member even said, that's not fair to the architect, that's misleading. And he was right to call that out. They've tried to minimize the detrimental impact on the surrounding community. They've claimed that Birdsall was 14,000 square feet. That was misleading. They tried to minimize the 155 child capacity of the child care center. And, you know, they kind of slipped this one in, but if you go back and read the transcripts, which we all have done on the neighbor side because it's so important, they actually had their traffic expert come in and testify about Make-Believe Boulevard and how that really reduces the number. The traffic expert, he's going to talk about the attendance in the child care center. He isn't qualified to do that. And more importantly, even if he was, if you look in his report, nowhere is that addressed. They did that because they realized that you all, the 155 was resonating with you all, and you knew that that's a problem, that they were trying to put, you know, they were trying to put something, you know, a very large vehicle in a small space is what they were trying to do. And they tried to minimize the turning movements. They did this on the day of the year at the end of July. I know Mr. Galvin, and I know, you know, the expert says this is the industry standard, but is it really the industry standard to do on July 30th, whenever most people are away to summer? I mean, they did that to minimize the intensity of the existing traffic at this site. They tried to claim that other buildings in the area are comparable or similar, I should say, that's the word Ms. Cofone used, to what they intend to build. I mean, Mr. Cofone, she admitted on cross-examination, Roosevelt School, that's not a school. It's residential apartments. It's all residential. That was one of the things she proposed to. Across the street from the site, again, we've talked about this, lots of small businesses which, you know, don't have the dedicated parking, Domino's, Banderas, the hair salon, the laundromat. So, you know, they failed to account for these trucks that I've mentioned from Domino's trucks. I mean, the report doesn't even address that. What impact all these cars coming in and out of the intersection and the Domino's truck that's there, that's a regular problem that we're dealing with. So, you know, in closing, I just want to say, you know, I want to thank you all again. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your service. I'm asking that you deny the applicant's 14 variances, including the use variance for lot 5, which is being used for an off-site employee parking lot. It's not an inherently beneficial use. It's not essential. And it's not integral to the use on lot 1. They're not entitled to the presumption. And the detriments here substantially outweigh. There are no benefits to this community, and it doesn't promote the public welfare. So with that, I'll end. And again, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to listen to me.
Thank you, Mr. Novich. Are there any other?
I'd like to pick up.
Yep, maybe Mr. Eisenberg first, and I see Ms. Kurek, she has a comment, so we'll get to everyone. Mr. Eisenberg,
raise your right hand.
Yep, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
State your full name for the record, spell your last name.
Mark Eisenberg, Ayzenberg, resident Summit, New Jersey, 07901. So I've actually sat through all the testimonies for the last, I think, 4 or 5 of them. I'd like to come from kind of the side of a family member that has several kids. I moved to Summit May 1st, 2018. When I moved here, I had a 1-year-old daughter. She was actually 11 months. She's 3 now. I have a 1-year-old son. My family and I are planning to have kids. Just based on kind of where I've seen Summit and the schools and the options that we have here, I do not think we have enough locations. So we looked at Zadie's, we looked at the Connection, YMCA, Super Kids. Some of them don't allow you if you don't have a kid 3 and older, or some of them don't have certain dates that my wife and I need to send our kids to. And so, for example, in my situation, we had to send our daughter to Livingston. And now we're looking for a school for my son, who is 1 year old. And we're trying to figure out what location, where to send him. We can't send him to the school that my daughter's going because they're full. And so it just adds a super, super complex thing. We're expecting to add a couple more kids. And I do think that this is a beneficial proposition. As I see the town, it's growing. There are a lot of young kids, guys. This town is booming. Like, I've noticed a lot of different properties going up for sales, and the families that are moving are all coming in with young kids. And I just do not think there's enough schools available for daycare support. And my wife does want to go back to work at some point. At this point, like, we can't, because it's just going to make a very, very difficult commute for us, drive our kids to different schools and things like that. So just want to voice my kind of concerns around that.
Thank you, Mr. Eisenberg. Ms. Kirk, if you'd like to, similarly, you'll be sworn in. You can provide some testimony.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Dennis, off of mute first, though.
About that. Sorry. Maureen, do you raise your right hand? I can't see it. There you go. Do you swear or affirm testimony about the given this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
State your full name for the record, spell your last name.
Sure, it's Maureen Kurek, Kurek.
You may proceed.
Thank you. So I have read the master plan for Summit, and throughout the plan, it talks about balance. And then we are considered a neighborhood business zone, and the Summit definition of that is that the primary function of this zone is to offer a mix of residential uses and convenient commercial services that are compatible with the nearby residential neighborhood and minimize impacts of such development on adjacent residential areas. The commercial uses are relatively small in scale and related to the day-to-day needs of nearby residences. Buildings often contain a mix of street level, commercial, and residential on the upper floors. That is not what's happening here. Is it okay if I show the picture or the evidence N6? Is that something we can do?
Yeah, I have it. Hold on.
Thank you.
And what are we looking at, Chris?
A photo Ms. Kurek submitted at 7.
I don't care about that. What is it?
It's a picture of Cottage Lane. It's where a lot of neighborhood children play, which will not be able to continue.
Did you take the picture?
Yes, I did.
And when did you take it?
When did I take it? July 15th, I believe.
I'm not holding you to that. So you took it sometime in July. It's good.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's considered in evidence. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Can you zoom in a little?
Sure.
This is common, a common occurrence on Cottage Lane. These children don't have backyards. We don't have a playground on our side of town. So this is it for us. So with adding this giant monstrosity of a building and adding all of the traffic, you're adding safety issues. This is not in balance with our neighborhood. I just don't see any beneficial use to us. When I look out my back door, I see the learning circle. Why do I need to see another daycare out my front door? We are good on this side of town. You want to add options, put them in someone else's neighborhood. We're good over here. We have a lot. So again, I don't think it's in balance with the Summit master plan. I don't think it fits the neighborhood business zone. And I think it's a giant safety issue, and you're adding an incredible amount of traffic to our street. And our children would have a place to play or hang out or learn to ride their bikes. So please deny this.
Thank you, Ms. Kirk.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other neighbors? Ms. Baldacchini, would you like to speak? Yep.
Hello.
You need to be sworn in, though, I believe, at this time. Dennis, was she sworn in prior? Unmute first, please, Dennis. Thank you.
Weren't you under oath previously?
I believe I was.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
Carolyn was, but let's do it anyway to be sure.
Good
Raise your,
idea.
raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may proceed.
So again, thank you to everybody. Thank you to all of you volunteering your time. We have a fabulous city. And one of the reasons it's great is because of everyone who volunteers on our boards. So I really appreciate it. And I appreciate your patience with us. As I said before, we don't have hired planners or other people. We have great neighbors. And what you're seeing is a reflection of this neighborhood. But before anything, I'd like to say that I'm not against child care centers. I recognize that there may be a serious need in Summit and parts of Summit for a child care center. I would encourage you all to put child care into the Google Map search box and see what parts of Summit are well served with child care centers and what parts of Summit are not very well served. We all know what crossing Summit is like at certain hours of the day and how it may be beneficial in one part of Summit and not so beneficial in another part of Summit. One of the reasons that was given, it struck me in reading the transcripts of the meetings that I wasn't able to attend, is how the certain conditions were kind of used as justification for a child care center. So I thought I'd like to talk about my neighborhood, our neighborhood first, because it truly is a unique neighborhood. We love our diversity in Summit, and it is one of our greatest selling points. It really is. Makes us special as a city. And much of it is on our street and in this Park Avenue area neighborhood. The diversity of foods, the diversity of languages, the diversity of, and it's historic. In the 1950s, it was all Italians. Today it's Costa Ricans. Who knows, 30 or 40 years from now. It's also a very sensitive and delicate neighborhood with a very delicate balance between the small businesses and the residents. I love it. It's not for everybody, but I love it. I love it. I love how on snow days, I don't have to worry about having food or not having food because I can walk anywhere. I can get milk, I can get food. I can always get somebody to help me clear the snow in my driveway because of the small businesses on the street that are landscapers. We're also very, very, very considerate and neighborly. And we have managed to make a positive out of something that others may not, right? So we have trucks pulling in and out, and Sheppy is very considerate, Frank's Tree Service is considerate, Medina's is considerate. Everyone is considerate. If we're pulling out of our driveway, they wait for us. It's a very, very lovely and beautiful neighborhood. The way that Birdsall was functioning, or barely, is a perfect example of this. I may have seen, 5 customers at Birdsall in the 16 years I've lived on this street. Hardly ever saw anybody. When we say low impact and low, we're really saying almost nothing. Nobody ever complained about the children who would ride their bikes on the parking lot. The configuration of Birdsall, imagine for a minute, you're looking at, you have the Domino's Pizza behind you. You're looking across Park Avenue and you have Birdsall on your left. You have those pretty colorful houses on Cottage Lane in front of you, and you have the houses on your right that are on the corner of Cottage and Park. That has become a piazza. That's become a place to congregate, say hello, stop and meet your neighbor. Children will bring their bikes. It's become a piazza. It's filled with light. It is a beautiful place. So what I'd like to really help everybody understand is that what we have right now is amazing. On the corner of Orchard and Park, across the street from the what used to be the Italian farm, Francesco's Garden, which is what we're referring to as the ancillary lot. Am I correct? That's the lot in the R5 Zone 2 family residential zone. They're filled with trees. It is hardly noticeable that it is a parking lot. Also because there are hardly ever people there. And again, there's this wonderful neighborly, sure, you know, if someone at Banderas wants to go to Banderas and can't find on-street parking, which is very common, they would pull in there and go to Banderas and have a bite to eat. So it's a very lovely community. Very positive. Every aspect of it is positive. We are going to miss Birdsall. So for something to come in instead of Birdsall, it has to really convince us, or at least me, that that is going to be maintained, because parking is hard on the street. So the little businesses have trouble. The hair salons, Banderas. And if we have our on-street parking taken up with an overflow of parents pulling into the childcare center, Banderas will suffer. The small hair salon will suffer. And there is an organic importance to those small stores. And we have to think of the connection of the apartments above. Affordable housing is important in Summit, a diversity of housing, a diversity of middle-class housing, housing for people who don't make very much money. A lot of that housing is on our street. If those small businesses have trouble because their clients cannot park on Park Avenue, they may not be able to stay. And the people who live upstairs may not be able to stay. This could irrevocably change this street, which has been historically extraordinary. I lived through this shift. The last Italian store closed. We said goodbye. And a new generation came in, and it's exciting. And it is precious, and it deserves to be protected. A childcare center is probably very, very important in Summit. That we have Zadie's, that is 1 mile away from Birdsall. We have the Learning Center, right? The YMCA, the nonprofit, which is 0.03 miles from Birdsall. There's the other childcare center that going towards ShopRite, probably half a mile away. Overlook has childcare in the hospital. So in this tiny little 1 mile radius are 4 childcare centers. Now, a childcare center that has a tuition of $22,500 a month.
Can't discuss that.
Okay.
All right. And the other thing I'm going to ask is, you've been talking for a while, and I'm hoping you're going to go towards a conclusion soon.
Thank you.
Right.
I'll put it a different way. My neighbors need childcare, but they can't afford it. My neighbors who don't have childcare, they don't have childcare because there's not childcare facilities. There are 4 facilities. They don't have childcare because they can't afford them. This childcare center would serve parts of Summit, ideally, beautifully, but not this part of Summit. This childcare center would absolutely disturb this neighborhood. It is massive. With that roof, it's 2.5 stories high. I took a look at CVS on DeForest Avenue. It's like picking up CVS, plopping it on Park Avenue, and adding 1.5 stories because you're putting an attic in. The whole point of the neighborhood business zoning was to avoid, and I remember the phrase because I went to the meetings, I talked. We didn't want that kind of strip mall parking that you would see with a completely asphalt lined parking lot, which is not appropriate in this neighborhood. And it may be appropriate in many parts of Summit, just not this one. This is a neighborhood where people walk to the train station. People walk here. This is a massive, massive, high density development project that is going to bring in not 75 cars, because that's one way. Parents are going to come in the morning to drop their children off. They're going to go home. They're going to come back in the afternoon to pick up their child, and then they're going to go home. So that 75 cars is 300. The traffic consultant said 75 to 90 cars. So that's 300 to 360 cars every day, Monday through Friday, on Park Avenue, which is a small street. Other people use it as a cut through, but it's really not. It's not Broad Street. It's not Morris Avenue. It's a very small street. I can't even imagine what going east on Summit Park Avenue, trying to turn left to go up the hill in Springfield Avenue is going to be like with 300 to 360 added cars a day, every single day. The children in my neighborhood walk to school. I don't know how, with the added traffic, I'm very worried about their safety. I'm worried about the safety of the children who play in their front yards, because this is a different neighborhood. A lot of the homes don't have backyards, so they play ball in the front yard, or they play ball in the driveway. And if we get a lot of heavy traffic again, I'm worried. I'm worried about the children on Cottage Lane, the Muse. So I ask you to please, not here, do not accept the variances for neither lot. Neither the lot in the 2-family zoned section or the lot in the neighborhood business zone, because again, that's a neighborhood business zone. It's not a commercial zone. I read through the transcripts. A lot of times we were described as a commercial zone. We're a neighborhood business zone with residents. Summit could very well need a childcare center, but this part of Summit does not need a childcare center.
Thank you, Carol.
Do not approve them. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Sharon, I think we saw, didn't catch your last name. Were you interested in making a comment?
I am.
Okay. You'll need to be sworn in, then you can testify.
Sharon Fosco.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony?
I'm sorry?
Why do you have an echo?
Technical difficulties.
Do you have Zoom devices bound next to each other?
Yeah.
Does someone else right next to you have it open?
Is it good? Is that better?
Yes.
Yes.
Uh-oh, now I can't hear anybody.
You're on mute. You got on mute.
No, I'm not on mute.
We can hear you.
I'm not on mute. You muted me.
Right, raise your right hand again. Do you?
I'm not on mute. I can't hear anybody.
Use mine then.
Okay. Give it to me.
Oh, you gotta come over here. Hold on. I need the meeting ID. We'll do this again.
I don't know how you muted me.
All right.
All right, another.
We can hear you though, just so you guys know. Be careful what you say.
I can't hear. Really,
All right, maybe while they're figuring out their technical difficulties, we'll move on to another neighbor here. Mr. Gonzalez,
Hello?
would you like to speak? And then I see you, Jeff Couric. I see you as well. Don't worry. But Mr. Gonzalez, do you want to provide some testimony?
Not quite yet. If you want to shoot over to Jeff, I'm just trying to get my notes.
All right,
all
Jeff.
set. I
All
do
right, Jeff,
appreciate it.
you're up, Jeff.
I'm up.
You need to be sworn in here though first.
Raise
so.
your right hand, Jeff. Do you swear or affirm testimony about the given this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your full name for the record, spell your last name.
Jeff Kurek, Kurek.
All right, go ahead.
So I'm done. I'm at 68 Park. Maureen Kurek, who just spoke earlier, is my wife. We've been here about 10 plus years. You know, Carolyn's a tough act to follow because she really bleeds it out, and I totally agree. You know, we love this community here, and I think sometimes people think, you know, this street, it's a cut through. You know, you want to get from point A to point B from, you know, Springfield, or, you know, you just cut through here real quick. But it's not. It's got great diversity. It's, you know, there's a lot of families here that from different nationalities that all kind of get along. You know, there's small businesses here. It just has a lot of, I don't think people realize the sense of community that is here. Now there's been, you know, since we are cut through street, you know, we've had some, you know, recent traffic speed studies done, and, you know, we've met with the mayor and the chief of police, and we've had some, you know, additional speed signs on both sides. So the thought of people being dropped off in front of that building across the street, walking small children across, seems like absolutely insane to me, with what's going on and the problems we're trying to solve. I mean, also the idea of dropping your kid off and taking a maximum of 5 minutes to get into that building seems like, I don't know, it just seems like such a stretch. A 2-story building, elevators, running across streets, you know, with the traffic. It just, not a lot of things make sense. You know, it's really, we're not complaining about the use of this. It's the intensity of uses of this space. It's just so radically different than what is going on in this neighborhood that we've kind of grown to really love over the last 10 years here. You know, that's what I think what we're really talking about. It's really ratcheting it up to something that just does not work in this neighborhood. And, you know, we've just kind of grown to love it so much that it's just, I don't know, it just seems like really a crazy idea. So I'm voting against this, and I hope the board kind of sees our point. Thank you.
Mr. Kurek. Sharon, you want to try it again? Can you hear us? You'll need to unmute if you can't hear us.
Yes, I can hear you. Doing this thing.
The echo, yeah.
Hold on. Just turn one of them off, right?
You're on the speaker.
Perhaps if Ivan mutes his iPad,
it's
that
good
might
now.
take care of it.
Although I don't know where I am anymore.
Yep, we can see you. You're on Ivan's iPad now. So we'll just need to swear you in first, Sharon. Yep, one sec. Go ahead, Dennis. You'll need to unmute, Dennis.
Kindly raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm testimony about the given this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
State your full name for the record, spell your last name.
It's Sharon Fosco, F-O-S-K-O.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Okay. I'd like to thank the board first for the time in this important matter, especially for the rest of the neighbors as well, for coming here to speak and hear what everybody has to say. So I'd like to thank the board for that. I've lived on Park Avenue for 14 years, and I'm extremely knowledgeable with the conditions in this area. This is absolutely not the proper location for this type of building or business. It's a substantially detrimental building and circumstances to the community and its residents on Park Avenue, Cottage Lane, and Orchard Street. Contrary to what Ms. Cafone has told you, there is no other commercial building that on the street comparable to the 2-story, 11,000 square foot building they want to put here on Park Avenue. This size building will not be in rhythm with the neighborhood at all. It will be like parking a tractor trailer Mack truck in a compact parking space. It just doesn't fit. You know, the 8,000 square foot building Ms. Cafone keeps saying is across the street. That's just really misleading, because I want to explain what is across the street from the proposed location. It's a hair salon, a Domino's takeout pizza place, a laundromat, and Bandera's restaurant with its 4 separate businesses and residential apartments on the 2nd level. That, all of that totals 8,000 square feet. So, you know, this is not an oversized 2-story building, which that's what they're proposing to put in here. And these businesses, these 4 businesses that are across the street, they serve the neighborhood. They serve the neighborhood during blizzards when we can't get out to go get food. They do serve the business, and they are there to serve this neighborhood. They're small businesses that are not a big corporate entity coming into a neighborhood. The other building that Ms. Cafone stated as comparable also was not even a commercial business. She referred to Roosevelt School, which in fact has not functioned as a school since the late 1970s. It's all condominium, it's all residential. So she also said that Natal's Bakery in one of her statements as comparable could be seen from Park Avenue. You cannot see Natal's Bakery from Park Avenue. You need to go down Park Avenue, turn onto Park Place, make a left-hand turn, and then make a right-hand turn onto Broad Street before you can physically even see Natal's Bakery. So, you know, I just, you know, her statements are completely incorrect, and they are extremely misleading in trying to persuade the board to pass this. Like, we have big buildings on the street already, so what's one more? Well, in fact, we don't have big buildings on the street. So putting one here is going to really stick out, and it does not serve this neighborhood whatsoever. The parking situation, we've discussed that at almost every meeting. The parking situation on Park Avenue is one side of the street only where they're proposing to put this building. So, you know, I mean, one side of the street only where they plan to build is, it's that whole street on the opposite side is already full every day. I can barely even get out of my driveway without having somebody help me out because there's cars parked on both sides of the same side of the street, but in both directions. It's difficult already. Adding more cars parked there and adding more cars trafficking this street is not going to be beneficial, and it's going to actually be a detriment to this whole neighborhood. It's going to be a safety issue. It's just the fact that, you know, it's just not, the parking is bad. So if the Learning Center is needing extra parking spaces for their functioning of their facility, there aren't any extra parking spaces. We actually don't even have enough on the street now. And so, you know, when they take away the parking spots, if they get there earlier than, let's say, somebody that wants to go to Banderas or somebody who has a 10 o'clock hair appointment, and now somebody is parked on the street, those spots will be taken from people who actually benefit from being in this wonderful street and community. There's heavy traffic during the morning and evening time periods when 155 additional cars would need to be on Park Avenue and Cottage Lane. This would absolutely be detrimental to the safety of the neighborhood, most likely the children, because they all have to walk to school from here. It will also cause more traffic on an already extremely busy street. The safety of the children in this neighborhood would be severely at risk with even more traffic than what already exists. With both Orchard Street and Cottage Lane being one-way streets, the traffic will be even more congested on Park Avenue because that's the only street to allow for an entrance into the proposed facility. There is a Domino's Pizza directly across the street from the proposed site, which has a very large truck, as you saw in the evidence pictures, parked there, and that truck does come quite often. And because we're all in the neighborhood, we make exceptions for that truck. We wait for the truck to unload. We cannot get around that truck. And there is no way that two-way traffic on Park Avenue, you cannot get by that truck. And you will block up traffic all the way to Springfield Avenue and beyond if you have to wait for that truck. The other trucks that are coming in and out of this street on a everyday basis, at least twice a day, are Frank's trucks. Frank is a wonderful neighbor. I live directly across from him, so I hear the beeping as he's backing out every morning. It doesn't bother me because Frank is so wonderful to have as a neighbor. During snowstorms, sometimes I'll go outside. My driveway is already plowed. I've never asked Frank to do that. He just takes it upon himself. He's part of the neighborhood. Even though he runs a business out of here, he is part of our neighborhood. And with that, his staff is extremely respectful of us on the road. But I will tell you that when Frank's trucks are coming in and out of his driveway, that you cannot pass that truck either. His trucks are huge. And we have on average, I'd say maybe 3 or 4 Frank's trucks coming in and out in the morning and then going back in the evening, right around the same time that this learning center wants to have children coming to the school and being picked up. So that is something that actually has never been addressed during the previous meetings. And I felt it was extremely important for the board to know that we haven't brought everything every meeting to you. We were waiting to be able to speak, which tonight I'm grateful for the fact that we actually can tell you how we really feel. So with all of that, it's the only other street. So the Domino's truck is there. Right. I'm just looking at some notes here because it's hard to remember everything. When that Domino's truck is there and Frank's trucks on the street, the visibility is severely impaired. You cannot see around those trucks. They are huge. So when you're trying to get around the truck, which will, if there's another car that's trying to get around the trucks, it's extremely dangerous to children and residents who are walking. I'd also like to comment about the off-site parking lot, which is zoned for residential use only. The inherently beneficial use doctrine, use of that does not apply to an off-site employee parking lot. It's 2 separate lots in 2 different zones. And we should not lose its residential status The way it's been used has been unlawful, but it's been used on a small scale. So no one really ever even noticed it. At most, there's a few cars in there on a regular basis. So that has been something that's been able to be utilized by the neighbors and for the small businesses. So it should not be used as a business parking lot. It doesn't fit with the neighborhood, and it's going to present many dangerous and unsafe situations. So I'll say it again. You can't allow a tractor trailer Mack truck to park in a compact parking space. And this is what the Learning Center is trying to do. They're trying to park their big Mack truck tractor trailer building in a compact parking space, and it doesn't fit. So it doesn't fit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fausto.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Gonzalez, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, definitely.
You
Unless
just need to be sworn in here, Mr. Galvin, if you
Yeah,
will.
raise your right hand, Walter. Do you swear or affirm testimony about to give this matters the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
yes,
State your full name for the record, spell your last name.
Walter Gonzalez, Gonzalez.
All right, you may proceed. Go ahead.
Awesome. I actually just threw up on the group chat, and I don't know how much value it is now, but it's a published opinion. It's a little bit more recent that touches on the medical v. Princeton, and just talks about accessory use and really the balancing test and the values that boards should be considering. It seems like you guys are already well versed with everything that is going on and how to do the analysis. It just happens to be one that is a little bit more recent and considers a piece of property that is different from another piece of property that is being zoned. So just to be clear for everyone, we're talking about Birdsall owning two pieces of property. One is in a residential zone and it's historically been used as a parking lot. One is a building that we're going to put a daycare in, which is great because we need daycares. And they're getting a bulk variance to go above 10,000 to 11,000, which is still fine because we all need daycares. I don't know where that dad is from before who spoke up, but I just want to high five you for being a dad in the middle of the pandemic and raising kids and still wanting to have more and being in Summit. So yeah, it's definitely very difficult to get a daycare in town, especially with your kids together. So I'm on both sides of the fence here because honestly, I represent Frank's Tree Service. That's my dad. I grew up on Park Ave, 56 Park Ave my entire life. I joke, but not really, that I learned how to ride my bike in that Birdsall parking lot. I'm pretty sure I flipped over the chains over there when they try to keep you out every once in a while trying to do some bunny hops, but not, ever since I've had kids. My testimony is it is going to change the use, the volume of traffic that goes in. It's very true that it's not going to change that it's a parking lot in R5, but it absolutely is going to change the amount of cars that use it and come on a daily basis. Whether that's important enough of a factor for the board to consider in thinking whether they should maybe tone down the amount of students they're willing to take. Maybe they don't go to 11,000, maybe they go to 7,000. Again, that's not within my wheelhouse. I don't know what considerations you guys are allowed to make and impose conditions wise on them. But having heard everything tonight, it does sound, and given the scope of the world, daycares are important, but this is a very unique part of Summit where you do have pinch points at several places of traffic, Frank's being one. So, between 7:30 and 9, which is, I believe, in the traffic study as the peak hours, yeah, that's when you have our trucks coming out and going to service Summit community members and, work around town. It's also the same time that you might get other commercial business going on at Banderas, people grabbing lunch or breakfast rather, and just hanging out. Guys going down to the hardware store. I think there's traffic that was unmentioned in the report, but that citizens know about. I think that's important to consider. That said, I mean, it's also very valuable to have daycares. So it's a very tough decision for you guys. Again, I respect what everyone's doing and thank you for the patience and also for the tech savviness of being able to get so many people on Zoom and have them be willing participants. That's fantastic. And again, thank you to all the Summit people who came out to voice their opinions. I'm just throwing it out there as a business owner, as a Franks guy, there will absolutely be traffic issues to begin with. That's not to say that they won't be overcome. We've gotten around other things in the past. But right, it's a reality that was not mentioned in the reports. And it's one that they should consider, perhaps maybe even reevaluate if it wasn't brought up in the original reports for some reason, that there is high traffic, high commercial traffic on that street between certain hours. It'd be foolish not to go back and consider that from their point of view, but right, that's not my decision. So yeah, I will end on a good note. Cheers, everyone. Thank you for having us and for hearing, and public hearings are amazing.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez.
That's all I've got to say. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public that would like to make a statement for or against? Speak now or forever hold your peace. I don't see anyone further. So with that, Mr.
Actually,
Feld. Oh,
sorry,
Mr.
I have a question. I don't know if this is allowed.
Try us. Let's see.
Okay, so it's a question for the board. Assuming that everything goes well and the daycare is allowed to rezone where Birdsall is, and they're allowed the accessory use of the parking space. Obviously, we're not privy to the contract language or whether this is a lease or like a buyout or whatever the case may be. And I'm not bringing that up. I'm just saying, going forward, let's wish them well, but assuming the worst, things go south in 5 years. Is that R5 space designated now as commercial answer use?
Let me answer your question. It's a great question. People get this confused all the time. So even my board members, maybe the new ones might be confused about it. We don't, when we grant a use variance, we are not changing the zoning. We're just granting a variance. We're allowing that use to go in that location. We are also not granting it for this daycare operator. We're granting it for the location. So if they don't do well, maybe they'll sell it to somebody else. And if they don't do well, or the location's not good for them, somebody else will come along and use this property for some other purpose that is permitted in the zone.
So the concern there is, because it's a residential zone, I think there's some concern that you don't want the R5. R5 is the parking lot, correct?
The parking lot, I think, is a little bit more complicated, and we're going to have to evaluate it, because I think there hasn't been any argument that it's a pre-existing non-conforming use, but it's been used as a parking lot for a long time, and that's usually evidence that it shows that the site can accommodate the impact of that use.
Correct, but no one has forced Birdsall to, go through an undue hardship of having to convert that into living space, residential space, and build a house there.
How
My
come?
concern would be, well, right, I don't know. I wasn't alive for my time on the city board yet. But no, I think the question would be is it doesn't get rezoned, obviously.
Walter, how long has it been a garage? How long has it been a parking lot?
I will say 44 years.
Okay, it's a pretty long
Because
time.
I know my history here on Summit. Just, I had to read up when we were at Frank's, right? So it's like we've been here for a long time. What is the actual use allowed in this area, right? And I know my history when it was an AMP or what have you, which is still low flow.
So we don't know if there was permission for that to become a parking lot at some point, maybe because the records are lost because it's such a long time ago. If I looked up in historic aerials, if you're telling me, it's there 44 years, I should be able to find there's a parking lot there all that time. I don't know how the ordinances have changed over all the years. Nobody's made the effort to try to figure that out for this case. So we're just left with, it's been used for a parking lot for a really long time. The board will figure it out, okay? By the way, the case you cited was a good case. It's a published case. I like that. It was written by Judge Buxbaum, one of my personal heroes. And but what he did in that case, he reversed the board's decision to turn down the after-school program. But what he wouldn't allow him to do is he wouldn't allow him to put some kind of overnight accommodations there for the teachers, which I think, he did a very balanced decision, which was awesome. But yes, he did. He also cited all the correct language that we should consider, and even the Princeton case that we're under discussion for right now. Thank you. Very good job.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Thank you, Mr. Galvin. Mr. Feldman, any final remarks?
About how much time do we have, if you don't mind, Mr.
You
Calvin?
got about a minute.
Okay. In that sense, first, I'd like to thank everybody for these hearings. Just a couple of reminders. The main parcel, childcare is permitted use in that zone. So childcare is a permitted use in the neighborhood business zone. And what we're only talking about here is a use variance for lot 5. And the planner has provided substantial testimony that lot 5 using aerial photography has been used as a accessory parking lot to the main parcel since the 1960s. First, it was used by ShopRite, and then in 1975, the property was sold to Birdsall, and Birdsall has used it all along during that time. In fact, if you go there today, there's a sign, and the sign says parking for Birdsall employees and customers only. Now, the fact that that parking lot over time may not be heavily used, or maybe the parking lot is broken up, or there's not striped, or maybe even the fact that the residents in the area park there, these are just maintenance issues and they're just operational issues. It doesn't change the fact that for some 60 years, this parcel has been used as an overflow parking lot for the main parcel. Again, first as for a supermarket, and then for the plumbing supply warehouse. And that use continues today. Now, in regard to that 60-year use, the planner has testified and concluded that a use variance should be granted because the positive criteria has been met. And she looked at it 2 different ways. First, she looked at it and concluded that that parcel should be afforded an inherently beneficial use. And she did that because first, she looked at the main parcel. And that parcel, by statute, is an inherently beneficial use. Childcare in New Jersey, pursuant to 40:55D-4, which is the actual definition section of beneficial uses, it says it only has 5 examples of beneficial uses. And guess what? Childcare is one of them. And this goes to show you how important childcare is in New Jersey when it's one of the 5 enumerated examples of childcare. So the planner concluded that the main parcel should be afforded inherently beneficial use. And then she looked at the accessory parcel. And as you heard tonight, she went through the analysis, which is found in Medical Center of Princeton versus Princeton Zoning Board, 343 NJ Super 177, which has a 3-pronged test to see whether the accessory use is a core function of the main use. And she went through the analysis and she concluded, yes, parking, this parking lot is an absolutely core function of the child care center. And if you think about it, could it be any other way? Could you have a situation where parking is not a core function of a use? And there's some important cases out there that are virtually on point. And I cite Hughes versus Monmouth University, 394 New Jersey Super 207. It's a reported law division case. In that case, Monmouth University wanted to put parking on the fringe of its campus. And the court says, well, the university inherited beneficial use. Parking in support of the students going there, absolutely core function, and therefore should be afforded inherited beneficial use. It's ipso facto, it makes perfect sense. Another case, Scholastic Bus Company versus Zoning Board of Fairlawn, 326 New Jersey Super 49, Aptiv 1999. Another report decision. In that case, the applicant was a bus depot, a school bus depot, and they wanted to provide bus service to the schools in town. And the court there found that, yeah, of course, how is you going to provide busing to students if you don't have some place to park the buses? And so they deemed that to be a core function of the school. And what's interesting there is the bus depot was nowhere near any of the schools. It was on the other side of town. But again, parking absolutely is a core function in support of the main parcel. And that's what the planner found here. And we submit for that reason, lot 5 is an inherited beneficial use. The planner then went through the SECA analysis, because that's what you do when you have an inherently beneficial use. And she's very quickly was able to point out what the public interest was. Public interest, and it's been said many times, it's the provision of childcare, and which continues to grow in need is in this ever-changing and diversified workforce. She then went through the detriments, the second prong, and frankly, she didn't find that many. Neither she nor the traffic engineer found there were many detriments associated with this application. But importantly, if you look at prong 3, any of those detriments, the applicant has tried to mitigate through board conditions. So when the board suggested to us that we perhaps change the circulation for the site, well, we did that. And we went from two-way circulation to one-way circulation. And we think that was a good thing. And we think it helped the application. It also provided more parking. And when there were questions about our outdoor refuse, we looked at that as well. And we agreed. We removed the outdoor refuse and put all that inside. And then when some of the questions from the board concerned the kind of materials used in our facade, we agreed. And as a condition, we're willing to have vinyl, any kind of siding as a building material, if the board so decides. And we agreed that there shouldn't be any on-site events such as graduations, because that could possibly impact the parking. And as I said earlier this evening, when the issue came up of a potential issue regarding the infants, which would impact in the hypothetical possibly impact parking, again, we were willing to mitigate that potential by as a condition, imposing on our own selves that we won't have more than 2 infant rooms. Again, trying to mitigate any of the detriments that exist here. And then finally, the 4th prong for SECA is the balancing. And as I suggested, we don't think there's many detriments here. But then when you think about the balancing and what the positives are, so on the one hand, you have what we consider some but minimal impact on the community. On the other hand, the provision of childcare, which is one of the most important uses the state legislature has spoken to. And then you, on top of that, when you look at what's being provided in as far as the physical attributes of this new building and the new development and the operational changes, we think that we're bringing something really important to the community. We're taking a functionally deficient building. Building's probably 56 years old, and we're providing a brand new state-of-the-art building that is residential in character, residential in design, residential in color. And we're providing siding to, again, bring in the attributes of the community. We're providing curbing. Today, it's a free-for-all around that site. There's no curbing. There's curb cuts in every direction. It is an unsafe environment, and we're going to be providing curbing all around both parcels. As to the accessory parcel, which is where the parking is today, we're providing fencing to shield that parking from the neighbors. on-site detention. Today, there's absolutely no on-site detention on this property, but the applicant is going to build an underground modern detention basin to greatly improve the drainage in this area. And that's a real plus. Today, there's virtually no green associated with either parcel, but the applicant here has covenanted to provide substantial greenery on both parcels and has actually put together a formal a plan with the forester that the forester approved for landscaping. Again, another important attribute. There'll be no park, the childcare center will not be open on weekends or at nights. There will be no overnight parking. There's going to be brand new lighting on the site, LED lighting, which is going to be dark sky compliant. There's going to be a line crosswalk between the two parcels to provide greater safety for the residents as well as the employees who are going to go between the two parcels. And finally, the building itself today has virtually no fire safety features, but here the applicant is going to be installing a fully sprinkled building together with a fire alarm. And so these are really important improvements to a property that is not, just for the record, the property today is a non-conforming use in the zone. It is a functionally deficient building. It is beyond its useful life. The business is I would say, in the latter stages of utility. And while the residents in the area have, I guess, benefited from that, the fact that there's not a whole lot of activity going on, it is this owner's private property, and they would like to see it utilized in a way that provides economic utility to the owner and to the community. And that's what we're seeking to do with this new development. So we do think when you do the seek a balancing, when you look at the public interest and you look at all the improvements that we're bringing to the site, we think it's a clear case that from a balancing standpoint, that the detriments do not outweigh the positive criteria. In fact, it's the opposite. It's substantially in favor of the positive. Now, I mentioned that the planner looked at this positive criteria two ways. Again, she concluded that Lot 5 is inherently beneficial use. But importantly, she concluded that even if it wasn't an inherently beneficial use, a use variance still should be granted because in her conclusion, that lot is particularly suited for an accessory parking lot. And it's almost obvious when you think about it, because particular suitability, you have to analyze whether that particular lot could handle a parking lot on that site. And if you just take in consideration 60 years of continuous use as a parking lot, then again, it's obvious that it can handle, and it is particularly suited for a parking lot. It's been a parking lot for 60 years. It certainly has proven itself to be a parking lot. And so that, coupled with the fact that it's right up against a commercial area, is a good example of the kinds of uses where the courts have found that they should be deemed particularly suited. And that's exactly what the planner concluded, that this Lot 5 is particularly suited to be a parking lot in support of the main parcel. So again, the positive criteria is met two ways here. And the planner also went through all the analysis and the negative criteria, both for the use variance and of course in regard to the bulk variances. She, as to the first prong of the C1 analysis, I already explained that she did not, she concluded that the positive criteria was not substantially outweighed by the negative. And then as to the impairment of the zone and the impairment ordinance, again, she concluded that the zone would not be impaired. Again, if you think about it, the Lot 5 has existed for 60 years. It would be hard to conclude otherwise that that zone would be impaired by the continued use of a parking lot at that location. It's already established itself that it can handle, the zone can handle that particular use. And as to the master plan, she concluded that this use is highly consistent with the master plan. For the master plan, one of the goals of the master plan was the economic development that was tailored to the needs of the community. And she concluded that a childcare center that can provide needed childcare to the community was a very, would foster that goal, and certainly better than a plumbing supply warehouse, which could draw potentially from anywhere. You know, it could draw from all over the state. But here, a childcare use is particular to the community around it. And so for that reason, she did conclude that it did not impair the zone or the master plan. And for that reason, she concluded the negative criteria had been satisfied. So no matter how you slice it, the planner went through all the analysis and concluded either that the lot 5 should be granted a use variance because it was inherently beneficial use and it satisfied the secret criteria, or it was a particularly suitable use and we satisfied all of the negative criteria under Medici. And so for that reason, we do believe that the use variance should be granted. Just very quickly in regard to the floor area variance. There's been a lot of mention about what the neighboring buildings are. So when we talk about the fact that the Roosevelt School is no longer a school. Well, it may not be a school today, but the bottom line, the Roosevelt School is still a 32,000 square foot building. And we're talking about density, and we're talking about a floor area ratio. We're not talking about uses. So yes, a few blocks away is the Roosevelt School that's used as a condominium of some sorts, but it happens to be 32,000 square feet, and I believe it's 3 stories tall. Directly across the street is an 8,000 square foot building, and it's 2 stories directly across the street. Yes, it has multiple uses, and some of it is residential, but it doesn't change the fact that right across the street, there's an 8,000 square foot building. And down the road, somewhere near Park Street, it may not be visible from Park Street, but it's very close to this property, is Natalie's Bakery. Again, a 2-story building at approximately 13,000 square feet. We don't think there's residences upstairs, but it wouldn't matter if there was. It could be back office, could be anything. Bottom line, these are structures. And the variance we're seeking has to do with density. And for that reason, we think, and the planner concluded that our use is consistent, is comparable with other buildings in this zone. This zone is a mixed use, mixed sized, mixed character zone. And the planner concluded that, and she felt that this site, in conjunction with the nearby community, could handle an 11,000 square foot building. We also like to note that the legislature has spoken very clearly on floor area ratios as it comes to childcare centers. I cite the NJSA 40:55D-66.6, which is part of the MLUL, and it provides that the floor area occupied in any building as a childcare center shall be excluded in calculating the permitted density for that building under any applicable zoning. Now, this is an extraordinary provision. And essentially it says that—
Greg?
Yes.
Need a timeout. Mr. Spur, log on. Chris, log on.
What's up, Mr. Gavin?
Yeah, I'm waiting for, here we go.
There you go.
Well, we have another applicant, and I just got a text from, I think, Chris. Did I get it from you, Chris?
Yes.
Okay. We're not going to be able to reach the next case, right? Because we get—
That's right. No, we've reached our time limit. In the interest of concluding this case, yes, we won't be able to reach the third case.
So we have to carry them. And when are we going to carry them to?
The next hearing date is August 17th, and that works well for Mr. Kowalski because he'll be here for another application anyway.
All right, cool.
So
Good. Is that—
applicant for
Steve, you
that.
want to jump on?
I didn't hear you,
Kowalski,
Mr.
you want
Evans.
to jump on? You're on mute.
So are you looking for a motion?
Yes.
I am in a second. I just want to hear from Mr. Kowalski first.
You're on mute.
There
Yes,
you
that works well for me.
Okay. So, and I'm sorry to the Kvorks. I'm sorry. Okay. I was trying. That's why I was pushing everybody.
It's been
So
interesting.
We're going to carry to August 17th. Do you guys waive the time in which the board has to act?
Yes.
We have to act in a certain period of time. We're probably still okay. We probably have months, but are you okay? You're going to give us permission to wait?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. And Chris, can we put them on first on the 17th? Is that
Yeah, I think
possible?
that would work well, actually. There's only 2 other things on, so I think we could do that.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. So we
Great.
need a motion and a second to carry this to the 17th without further notice.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion. Who seconded? Liz seconded?
I did.
Second.
Yes. So motion by Mr. Steiner, second by Liz. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, guys. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Writing score. All right.
There you go. All right. I hope I didn't mess you up, Craig. Go.
No, not at all. So I was just speaking about NJSA 40:55D, that's 66.6, which I was explaining is really, if you think about it, it's an extraordinary provision. It reflects the legislature's desire to have childcare centers throughout the state without the burdens of local ordinances as to density, as to floor area ratio. Again, there's virtually no other examples in the entire MLUL where the state has relaxed the standards for a particular use, but as to childcare, they have, again, reflective of the state's desire to provide childcare. And the same applies, if I may jump to that, it applies to parking. If you go to NJSA 40:55D 66.6, it provides that, I'm sorry, wrong citation.
I was thinking, that's like handicap homes or something.
You're right about that. Give me 1 second. I'll come back to that. But going back to the floor area ratio, as I stated, the fact that the state has spoken on floor area and has suggested that these types of bulk issues should be relaxed is even further support of our variance for floor area. All right, and going to the parking issue that I mentioned. Again, the MLUL provides that the floor area occupied in any building for childcare should be excluded in calculating the parking for that center. So not only are local boards to not take into consideration the density of a childcare center, but they're not also to take consideration the floor area of that childcare center when making ordinances relating to parking. Again, I point these out to show that the legislature has spoken very clearly when it comes to childcare and the importance of it in the state of New Jersey. Now, in regard to parking, our parking consultant, John Kurak, has rendered a number of important professional opinions in his report and in testimony. In regard to traffic, he concluded that the existing traffic network around the parcels operated at a good service level, and the project would not have a material impact on that level. As to site circulation, he concluded the parcels provided safe ingress and egress. He also concluded that the main parcel can handle AM and PM drop-offs without material queuing on Park Avenue. And as to parking, he concluded the 6 dedicated drop-off spaces and the 1 handicap space would meet the AM demand for drop-off. As to employee parking, he concluded that the peak AM demand for employees was approximately 17 spaces, and thus the remaining 16 spaces, after you deduct for the dedicated drop-off, virtually covered the employee parking demand in the morning, leaving just 1 space short. And for that 1 deficient space, he concluded that there's more than ample parking, on-street parking in the community at all periods of the day, and they could easily handle that 1 deficient space. In fact, he concluded at any given time, there was upward of 50 available spaces in around the parking, in around the parcels. And so in sum, he concluded that the on-site and off-site parking supply was sufficient to support the project. We recognize that the neighbors have made comments concerning traffic and parking. We believe the great majority of them were anecdotal. Obviously, no expert testimony was provided. And we also would say that in a number of cases, we think that these things could be addressed through proper enforcement. So for instance, the Domino's tractor trailer, which seemed to have taken the life of its own on these hearings. I would assume that that's something that could be addressed through proper enforcement. But in any case, those kind of things really have nothing to do with our parcel. Okay? We have shown that we can have proper ingress and egress to our parcel, and we have shown in general that the traffic conditions in and around the site operate at a good level. So of course there may be specific examples where there may be a problem, but we think they're addressable problems. Now there are a few other bulk variances that the applicant is seeking. The planner opined that as to each one of these, she went through a detailed analysis as to all the bulk variances. As to the 3 bulk variances associated with the accessory parcel, she concluded that they should be subsumed within the use variance, so that if you grant the use variance, it would just make sense that you're also approving the bulk changes associated with that parcel. As to the main parcel, in general, most of the bulk variances are really reflective of the fact that this parcel is very irregular in shape. It's a smaller parcel. It's bounded by 3 streets, and it has 4 front yards, which is pretty unusual. So trying to comply with many of the bulk standards is very difficult. As the remaining bulk variances, she concluded that they easily fell within the public benefits test, again, which is reflective of the fact that this is a child care center, and as I mentioned a number of times, should be afforded an inherently beneficial status and is an important public interest that the state has expressed. So for all these reasons, we submit that the use variance should be granted. We submit that the associated bulk variances on the lots should be granted. And we also submit that preliminary and final major site plan approval should be granted. We appreciate everyone's time this evening. We think we have put on a good case, compelling case in support of our application. And most importantly, and one thing struck me from one of the neighbors is about that she deemed one of the, I think it was Frank's, as to be an important neighbor in the community. And we would like to be one of those important neighbors in the community. We would like to be someone that comes help out in around the neighborhood, just like Frank's would. So yeah, we may be perhaps the new person in town, but we like to be a part of that. And we certainly think we can do that when we are interacting with so many different parents who will be coming to our child care center. And we really think in that sense, we think we're going to be very well placed to be an important neighbor in this community. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Feldman. So before we proceed to deliberations, Mr. Galvin, can you summarize the conditions?
Well, I think Tom should weigh in. Mr. Behrens?
Tom?
All right, so understanding the hour that it is and in an effort to not rehash what we've already heard, given the substantial testimony and by the applicant and comments by the neighbors, I'll just summarize some of the issues as I see them. So beginning with lot 5, again, this is the off-site parking facility. There was a question as to whether or not it's an inherently beneficial use. I think my position was that I questioned whether it met that test or not. I think it might be safer to consider it under the Medici criteria, which the applicant has addressed. And again, that boils down to whether or not the site is particularly suited for the off-site parking. With respect to the particular features of the site, one thing that I don't know if I heard was emphasized or not was that the parcel itself is undersized relative to the R5 zone requirements, that the lot's about 4,000 square feet in size, where the minimum zone requirements are 5,000 square feet that could accommodate a single family home. So, and this also happens to be a corner lot. So I think the position could be made that it might be difficult to build a conforming use on this lot without any substantial variance relief. With that said, we understand the history of the parking on site, that it's been linked to the primary lot, lot 1, for a number of decades and for a number of uses, going all the way back to a supermarket that predates 1975. Moving on to lot 1 and the daycare use itself, again, there's been testimony that the question of the use itself is not really an issue. The daycare facility is permitted by right in the NB zone and is also permitted by the MLUL in all non-residential zones. So it's not the daycare use that's at odds, but I guess some of the issues in terms of detriments or intensity of use are, the question of the hour. And so I thought, again, instead of rehashing what's already been said, I thought Mr. Feldman did a good job addressing the statutory criteria and some of the benefits that the development might offer, including, reduction of the number of curb cuts on site, stormwater detention, various aesthetic improvements, and so on. I thought I would give an overview about some of those issues of the intensity of the use itself. Again, that the applicant has testified to, but also that the neighbors have some concern about. So going over, and when you measure or talk about intensity, you talk about, really the bulk or dimensional aspects, issues of traffic and parking. So in terms of the figures, I'll run through these as quickly as I can. The development itself, again, this is lot one, the daycare facility, complies generally with the lot area requirements and the setbacks. The NB zone actually doesn't have specific criteria, so by that fact, it complies. With respect to lot or impervious coverage, the zone requires 90%. The existing condition is 84%. It'll be reduced to 70%. So it complies and it's being reduced from its current state. The building coverage that's permitted is 30%. The existing is non-conforming at 43% and will be reduced to 35%, which is less than exists, but is above the permitted threshold in the NB zone. Building height conforms, and the floor area itself does conform, where 75% floor area is permitted, but 68% is proposed. The caveat to that, of course, is that the NB zone permits a maximum of 10,000 square foot buildings. So that's the flip side to that. There are a number of other variances, the heights of fences and so forth that I think can be captured under the C1 hardship criteria with respect to the lot being, sort of an isolated lot surrounded on all sides by rights of way. Again, one example of that is, 6-foot fence height in the front yard, which is generally unavoidable, parking in the front yard and so forth. So in terms of other important criteria to consider, there's been an issue about parking. So what is the deviation? I don't know if that's been mentioned, recently or at this meeting at all. And the deviation that's being proposed is there's a requirement of 26 spaces and the applicant's providing 23. So there's a deviation of 3 parking spaces. Does that rise to the level of being a substantial detriment to the public good? That's up for the board to decide. And the other issue of traffic, we've heard extensively the traffic testimony, and really, I think it boils down to the peak hour demands in both the AM and PM peak hours, which generally occur Monday through Friday. And I say this as a parent with 2 kids in daycare at the moment. So I generally know how those types of operations work, albeit not with this particular provider, but a similar type operation in Bergen County. So, again, as Mr. Feldman said, it does boil down to, the site being an inherently beneficial use, identifying the public interest at stake per the SECA criteria. Again, we have a use that's been determined to be an essential public use. It's permitted use in the zones. It's permitted by the MLUL in non-residential zones. So in terms of detrimental effects or impacts, rather, the board will have to decide whether or not the parking, the traffic, and those bulk deviations that I just went over are enough to generally outweigh the public benefits of the use itself. So I think the board probably has enough at this point to begin its deliberations. I can, of course, answer any questions if there are any.
Tom, you did an awesome job. Thank you. Very grateful.
Thanks for hanging in there. Any questions of the board members for Tom?
Anybody? Okay, I have, by way of, let me just to the extent that this is a permitted use, the Sika balancing test wouldn't apply, doesn't really apply to this building because the use is what's supposed to be there. As to the parking lot, if you deem it to be an inherently beneficial use because you find that it's so integral to the operation under that Princeton case that was cited, that is the correct case to have been cited. In that case, what Mr. Novich was saying about applying the Sika balancing test is correct, but the focus is on the parking lot. And that would mean in the Sika balancing test, you define the positive criteria and it's assumed to be met. Then the next thing you do is you consider the negative impact. And there's two types of negative impact. The impact on the zone plan and the impact, whether there's a substantial impact on the neighbors. Then you have to come up with conditions to see if you can make that square peg fit into that round hole, because inherently beneficial uses, as this one is, aren't just necessary for this neighborhood. They're necessary for Summit. They're necessary for Union County, the state of New Jersey. So sometimes you can have an inherently beneficial use that doesn't do anything for the block that it's located on. So in the end, what you're supposed to do is consider the negative impacts, see if you got conditions to limit it, and then balance is the benefit of daycare versus the impact from this parking lot. And considering the conditions is the benefit outweigh the detriments. That's really what you're tasked to do. The conditions that I do have that I don't seem to have anything to do with the parking lot, just I'll point that out. There will be a max occupancy of 16 infants, but that could go to parking, right? That was one of the points that could go to parking. 2, the refuse is to be stored indoors. 3, the comment about the siding, I'm not really sure. I don't recollect that. Does anybody know what the siding?
There was a mention back in the, I believe it was like a June 15 hearing where it was left to the discretion of the board. And I believe we ended up with a hardy plank siding was our preferred siding of choice.
So we're talking, it's going to be a cementitious material. So, and then the 4th is, and this one is important, no on-site events. When they graduate or there's something going on, they're going to go to another facility to hold those events. They're not going to hold them here because they don't have the parking to hold them here. And then 5 would be compliance with the board engineer's letter, whatever date that is. Christy, you know the date of your letter?
Off the top of my head, I don't. I can check and let you know in a second.
Nah, tomorrow's fine.
Okay.
Are there anything else that I missed? Any other conditions? Mr. Feldman, did I miss a condition?
I don't believe so.
I would add Dennis landscaping plan. And then Mr. Feldman, with regard to what Dennis cited as the first
I see your
condition,
hand up, Ivan. Just give me a second.
the maximum 16 infants, the infant occupants, does that square with what we discussed during today's session with the 2 infant rooms?
Yes, so there are 2 infant rooms, and each one has a max occupancy of 8.
Okay, great.
Ivan, you have something to suggest?
No, I thought at the first hearing, Mr. Urko had made a comment about the water pressure for the fire hydrant and in response to the fire chief's comments, and I'm not sure if that got covered. Wasn't that one of the conditions?
Isn't that also, Chris, is that in your letter also?
Yeah, they had met with the fire department and they were adding another hydrant and they were checking on the flow, which they determined was adequate.
So it's been resolved in the meantime. I'm usually catching all those miscellaneous engineering things. I'm counting on Chris to catch them out in the field and through his letter. So,
Dennis, the letter's dated March 27th, the most recent one.
Thank you.
Yep.
This way we won't have to look for it later.
Okay, that's what I have. Any board members have any other conditions noted? That's what my notes.
And Tom and I are available to explain it. Remember, to the extent that the parking lot is part of this case, You have a use variance, so it requires 5 affirmative votes.
Okay, all right, with that, thank you, Dennis, thank you, Tom. Karen, are we taking a question here from Carolyn? Dennis, sorry, I don't want to.
Carolyn, what's your question?
I'd like to make a question. Can I ask the company to please offer 25% of their spots as full scholarship to the families on Park Avenue, on Broad Street, on Orchard Street, and on Cottage Lane? Thank you.
Terrific. That's a wonderful thought. I don't know what they're going to do with that, but I think that was okay that you mentioned it. All right.
Okay.
We're going to push in.
All right. Let's do some deliberations then. Would anyone like to start the deliberations? Tom, I see you off mute and eager to go. You have anything to kick us off?
I'm not sure I want to go first.
He's
All right.
enjoying this. I'm not the chairman and I can talk thing.
All right.
I have a lot of notes here. I'm just not quite ready yet.
All right. David, would you like to start?
Sure, why not?
Right. Thank you.
So I've had a lot of trouble with this case from the get-go. You know, I appreciate the experts doing their thing, but in a lot of the testimony, I found there was a lack of credibility at times. And maybe it just stems from lack of familiarity with the neighborhood and Summit rather than actual lack of expertise. I didn't mean to demean anyone there. You know, I think there was one point where I was talking with the traffic engineer, and I recall him talking about circulation and drop off. And we were talking about the problem of potential queuing going back onto Park Avenue. And I believe at one point it was him or another person on the applicant's team who mentioned they anticipated drop-off times of 5 minutes. And you know, my kids have outgrown daycare, but I recall those days, and I only had 2 kids at daycare at the time. And if I had 5 minutes for drop-off or pickup, that was a miracle. So I'm thinking about that in the context of, all right, you're assuming your operations model, you've got, you know, all your assumptions going into your presumption that circulation is going to go one way. You start adding on incremental minutes onto that, you're backed up to Broad Street. So I had that in the back of my mind. And I'm thinking about the impact of parking and traffic circulation and, you know, what detriment it would pose to this neighborhood. I don't drive in this neighborhood very often. I can tell you after getting involved with this case, I did drive this neighborhood quite a few times. As a matter of fact, I most recently drove it at about 7:35 this morning. And of course, this is COVID impacted circulation, which it's a shame that this is going on for many reasons. But one is you can't get a true picture of what the traffic engineer may or may not have seen on July 30th last year. I can tell you on August 3rd, 2020, traversing Park Avenue in the eastbound direction at 7:35 in the morning, it was a slow go. And this was just due to, you know, landscaping trucks, contractor vans. I didn't encounter anyone from the tree service, but it was not the easiest drive. And I could only imagine parents dropping kids off for daycare because, you know, I remember being one and I wasn't always the most courteous driver, or in my case, subway commuter, when I was engaging in that effort. So, you know, I'm thinking about, okay, how do you alleviate that? And it really goes back down to the intensity of the use in my mind. And the only way you alleviate it is reducing capacity. And operationally, I'm sure that's not a good outcome for the applicant, but I'm just not there here on this one. I do think this is going to have a substantial effect on the neighborhood. So I'm leaning in the no direction on this.
Yeah, let me jump in too. I mean, I think this has been a very excellent case on both sides, and the applicant and neighbors have both presented excellent cases based on the facts and the situation in the neighborhood. I understand the neighbors have emotion about certain issues, but they've also presented some very important facts. Daycare is a very valuable commodity for Summit or any community, so I can't deny that. But also can't deny, as David alluded to, the significant negative impacts on the neighborhood of a project of this size in terms of traffic and parking and safety. And, you know, I don't want to say lack of credibility, but I just don't think the traffic studies in general often give, I'm not speaking of this one, I think in general don't often give a fair representation of what the reality is. The drop-off and pickup scenarios are very concerning for me in this neighborhood. I just think too much of it is taking place off-site on the street, especially that cottage place wind around in the back there. And I just think that the character, I do drive there. You know, I don't live that close. I might live in East Summit, but I do drive through there pretty regularly. And I do think that the current balance of residents and local businesses will be significantly and negatively impacted by a change of this size. So I believe the negatives of the traffic and the safety and the parking created by, admittedly, this very beneficial use of daycare of this size being in this location outweigh the positives that would obviously be created. So I'm voting against this one.
Anyone like to speak in the affirmative for this application? Seeing that we have at least two members, Mr. Yuko pretty firmly in the negative, and Mr. Mullen, I would say strongly leaning negative. Anyone like to speak to the positive attributes of this application? Liz, you're a long time, well, I think we started out over at Park Avenue. You have anything you'd like to add to this?
I'm born and raised on Park Avenue and still have relatives there. So I'm very familiar with the neighborhood, probably more so than the actual neighbors. And I agree with Tom. I think it's going to change the balance of the area. I don't have children, but I just know when I pass by Zadie's and the Summit Y, it is mayhem. And that's on a good day. Park Avenue is a mixed use. And I think this will just, I don't know, I think it'll just tip the balance and not great for Cottage Lane. And yeah, do I think that area needs improvement? Absolutely. I think, you know, when I was little, it was a ShopRite, and then Birdsall, it just doesn't look great. I think something needs to go there, but I don't think the childcare and the size, I don't think that's the right fit. And I'm leaning against this one as well.
Mr. Steiner, would you like to add anything?
Well, I've been contemplating this thing from all sides, and it's my neighborhood. We're just about half a mile away on that side of the hospital. So I was going to ask the planner, and then Mr. Galvin suggested I wait and ask him. The planner basically talked, and of course we've all ruled out the Sika test, but when she was going through the Sika test, she seemed to talk about each one individually, that each variance met it. And how far on the balancing act is it until when you have 14 things that you have to balance, how far can you go before you've gone overboard? And I think we're trying to put too much into this box. I guess the comment of parking a semi-trailer in a compact car space probably says it all. But I did want to know whether or not the balancing test, were those all individuals, or are we allowed to consider them all at one? And considering them all at one, I think it clearly means that this is a no application.
I don't understand the question, actually.
Okay.
Were you talking about all the variances?
All of the variances, if we use the Sika test on it, which you're saying we don't. Are they individually or are they cumulative?
I really misspoke. I think the Sika balancing test applies to the other variances as well as to the C variances. Okay. Do you understand? Does everybody understand that? I was thinking about the use variance and I just made a mistake because I do agree that this use is an inherently beneficial use on just the daycare. Let's forget the parking lot for a second. The daycare itself is an inherently beneficial use. I agree with Mr. Feldman's statement that the legislature has put a high level of importance in daycare. So if it needs variances, it's an inherently beneficial use. You should still apply the seeker balancing test. If you're finding, so far I'm hearing the board finding that the substantial impacts from this outweigh the detriments. The question is, what can we do to mitigate that and still approve this? And I don't know that we've addressed that yet. Is there something that we could do to make this workable? And so once you have an inherently beneficial use, everything, any variance relief that's required goes into the seeker balancing test. It's considered to meet the special reasons. What you're having a problem with is the substantial impact from this thing on the surrounding property and the surrounding neighborhood.
You know what would be helpful to understand, from my standpoint anyway. I'd like to see, my major concern is traffic and circulation here. And I would like to see what this, if you want to get me over the top on this, I'd want to see what this looks like in the fall when kids are presumably going back to school, at least, until we're told there are no in-person classes. But when the town starts getting back to normal rhythms, let's look at this and see, okay, what level of circulation, what level of additional use can Park Avenue accommodate with the circulation plan in mind and still function in a way that works for the city?
Okay. So what I'm not hearing.
The only thing I can say to you, David, about that is having been on that street many, many times over the years, I'm not sure that you're going to like the result.
Well, I don't necessarily want to like or dislike, but I get your point. I just want to see what the results are.
Okay, the applicant isn't going to like the result.
Fair enough.
All right. And before we proceed to a vote, I don't know if Mr. Millay or Mr. Lickett wants to add anything new or additional. No, Mr. Lickett's saying no. Mr. Millay, anything you'd like to add?
I've been in this town for quite a while, for 4 years, and I know this area pretty well. It's exactly like what someone said. It's like parking a huge cruise truck in a tiny little parking lot. The impact is going to be enormous. The traffic report was not sufficient. The impact on other streets will be really negative. It's nice to have a child care center in this place. However, I think the size and the volume of this project is disproportionate to this site. Maybe they should have picked a larger site or a different location, but I would say no to this.
Okay. All right, so Mr. Galvin, I believe the sentiment of the board is not in favor of the application, but
I think it's very clear that they're disappointed with the proposed circulation plan. Two things I feel duty bound to tell the board. One, that normally the court gives very little weight to a denial involving traffic. Now, this could be the case that the court sees it differently, but normally traffic's not enough to deny an inherently beneficial use, and especially one that's otherwise permitted in the zone. So what you have to be aware of is you feel strongly that the case is inadequate. You think this is 10 pounds of sand in a 5-pound bag, and we're going to turn it down. And I'll make my best effort to defend it, but I can't promise you that we will be successful if we go to court. That's all.
Well, I think that should we not also be talking about the fact that it is not safe for the young residents of the current area, that there's a safety issue there of crossing those. That's not traffic. That's not parking. That's what the community issues are for safety of the people who are there. The continuation of community businesses that could be detrimentally affected by this. I think we have to make a stronger case than just, oh, well, we did this.
Well, you got to help me.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do here in suggesting that we need, if we're going to turn this down, it has to be on safety issues. It needs to be on the detrimental effects that we've all heard from the neighbors and heard from, and have witnessed ourselves, for those of us that traverse that area quite a lot over the last 24 years, that adding to that is going to be a problem. And adding to this is important.
For me, it's not the daycare center itself. It's the size, the volume of cars, the volume of drop-offs and pickups. It's just the volume of it all. It's not the daycare center itself. It's just that site, I don't think, can accommodate the added number of cars, the added number of pickups and drop-offs every day. It just would change the very character of that whole area of town.
Not to mention impede emergency vehicle access.
Yes.
And I agree, we need to enforce the Domino's truck getting over the side, and somebody has to tell the chief that he has to send a patrol car down there to get him over to the side. We're going to have to do those things to be responsible to the neighborhood as well.
Well, you gave me more ammo. I'll have to work with it.
That's what you asked for.
That's exactly what I asked for. I mean, the resolution will pick up I'll pick up whatever I can in the resolution, but I think it always helps for you to talk to you're talking to the judge. The judge is going to review the transcript, and when you heartfully say something, that'll mean something to a judge when he considers the outcome that you asked for.
Okay. Any further comments? Otherwise, we'll move to a vote.
Okay. So you need a motion to deny?
Well, what's the best way to proceed, Mr. Galvin? Should we motion to approve and then
I'll
reject
say this
it?
is, I think, is there a motion for or against? So what do you think, Mr. Steiner?
Based upon what I heard, I would make a motion to deny.
Okay, go ahead, do it.
I'll second.
Excuse me, Mr. Galvin.
Yes.
I've been speaking with the applicant, and what we would ask perhaps, and then a postponement of the vote to see if there's anything more we can do. Listen, it's been clear to us, obviously, over the past few minutes, that you're going to vote this down, and we're trying to provide you with some mitigation factors in accordance with SECA to give you something to help you support this case, this application. And so it's going to take some, I'll call it work on our part, sharpening of pencils, but we ask that you give us that time before you take this vote.
Well, let me say this. This case has been bumping around for a long time in the middle of this COVID thing. And you're not going to like what I'm going to say next, which is, I think, making a suggestion for us not to vote when we've gotten this far, that doesn't work for me. If you had stopped me before we went into deliberations, I would have been okay with that. But once we go into deliberations, I generally am opposed to that.
Okay.
That doesn't crush you. You could go back to the drawing board, come up with a new plan, and refile. So.
Okay.
So Joe made a motion. Did you make a motion, Joe? Am I correct?
I did, and I believe there was a second by Mr. Yuko.
Seconded.
I second.
Okay. Roll call, Chris.
Okay, Vice Chairwoman Newell,
No.
So sorry, just to pause quickly, Dennis, this is what are we voting? We're voting against, just to be clear, sorry.
You're denying the motions to deny the application.
Okay. So yes.
So you're voting yes to deny. So Liz, maybe,
Sorry.
what's your vote, Liz?
Yes.
Awesome. I love,
It's late.
oh my God, yes. But it's not too late. You're still capable of making this decision.
True.
Okay, Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Mr. Loikitz,
Yes.
and Chairman Spur.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Feldman.
Thank you.
Thank you, neighbors.
Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate your service. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you,
board.
everybody, very much. Thank you for your service and thank you for volunteering.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great arguments.
All right, we're going on to a second meeting, right?
We're gonna just quickly clean up some other business we had here.
Okay.
Chris, if you want to just run us
We
through
go
that.
into executive session.
Well, we have, I believe we have some resolutions to approve quickly here.
John.
Yep. First resolution is 19 Highland Drive, application ZB-20-2012. Eligible voting, Mr. Spur, Mr. Yuko, Mr. Steiner, Ms. Newell, Mr. Mullen, and Ms. Schwartzstein. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Just let the record show that Ms. Schwartzstein has rejoined after a recusal from the prior case.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Who made the motion?
I did.
David.
Okay, Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Newell,
Yes.
Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Ms. Schwartzstein,
Yes.
Chairman Spur.
Yes.
Okay, and the next resolution is 18 Joanna Way, application ZB-20-2011. Eligible voting members are Mr. Yuko, Mr. Steiner, Mr. Mullen, Ms. Schwartzstein, Mr. Malay, and Chairman Spur. And we need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Ms. Schwartzstein,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
and Chairman Spur.
Yes.
Okay, and we got minutes from July 6th. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve those? Okay, is there a second?
Wait, who made the motion?
Mr. Malay?
Yes.
Okay, so Mr. Malay has a motion. Would somebody like to second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Seeing none?
Great. Excellent. All right. And we addressed the correspondence issue. So where's Mr. Galvin? Mr. Galvin will still just adjourn quickly and then head into our executive session.
We have to read a resolution first, so we can do that.
That was
So moved.
Wait, I got to read it because it violates the law if I don't do it. Resolution of executive session, whereas 10:4-12, the Open Public Meetings Act permits the exclusion of the public under certain circumstances where the body is of the opinion such circumstances exist. Now therefore be it resolved that the board is going to go into executive session to discuss the Gagliano matter, which is pending litigation that is anticipated at the time of the above matter will be made public. Once the matter is concluded, the resolution shall take effect immediately, and we will not be returning into the public portion of the meeting. We're just going to discuss it and conclude. Thank you for the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So now we're going to get off and then go back on into the executive session.
Yes, if anybody has a hard time getting in, just send me an email.
All right, and the court reporter, engineer, and planner are excused.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Aye.
See you over